That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the highly anticipated year end ranking podcast. Oh my god. Top 20 favorite movies of 2023. Dragon, I don't know about you. I certainly did see more movies in theaters than you did. But for me, man, this was easily the best year of film of the 2020 so far, especially in the last couple of months. I mean, we definitely got some highlights in the first half of the year for sure. Some highlights that rank very high on my list. A couple that maybe even top my list. We shall see. But Dragon, the last couple months of this year really were an embarrassment of riches for me personally. It's like we have just so many films from iconic directors coming out. It really felt like kind of like a 2007, 2019, 2010, that kind of year for me when I look back. So I'm very happy with this year's list. Any thesis on your end for this year?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of disagree with you, T. I don't think this year was great for movies.
Okay.
I don't know. It just felt overall
um,
like
I think there were certainly shifts in the type of films that were successful this year, which I'm sure will get brought up.
yeah. I don't know. It just thought like this year was overall. I really didn't like this year, just collectively. But in regards to the movies, I mean, there are certainly highlights, but I don't know. Like looking at it though, it's still like there are. I think the best way to summarize this year for me in my list are I I kind of put I kind of went with the movies that kind of left like that kind of surprised me, that kind of gave me an emotional, it kind of sparked like an emotional response, or kind of gave me a feeling, and the
So,
films that
so a movie like Old Dads, essentially.
just can't wait, can you? You just can't.
Well, Code Geass is the one who can't wait, technically. God. All right, I'm
Anyway, so
sorry.
I guess the best way to kind of summarize like how I kind of rank mine and everything is kind of how I looked at the year of film. Is that it's kind of like a three-tier thing almost. It's essentially
Mhm.
the films that left that kind of stirred an emotional response or left an emotional impact. Again, the films that I would looking over the year, the films that I would actively want to rewatch or like feel like seeing again, versus just kind of like, well, I guess it's on, I'll watch it. Versus like things like, man, I'd like to watch that again at some point. I'd like to give that
Sure.
another watch. And yeah, so it's kind of the so that's kind of the tier list for me. And also, again, I tried ranking, with quality from what I watched. So again, those are kind of like the three things I was bearing in mind. But yeah, I mean, it was a bad year for franchises, which is the majority of my list ordinarily. So there was,
But as you know, I am not a
yeah.
franchise guy. So Dragon, I was eating well this year. I'm sorry to
But
say.
even then, even the films that like are not my franchise ones. I mean, I liked them and I thought they were strong, but that's the thing. It's just it was kind of few and far
Like
between with like
both
the
Barbie
really.
and Oppenheimer, you weren't really like you liked both of those movies, but you didn't love either of them, right?
Well, that's the thing though, where like
Right,
even the
right.
strong ones that are on there, I mean, they're on there, but they're still just a matter of, there wasn't like a huge selection of at least the ones that I was able to see. Like for example, there are films that from both of us that I've seen, that you haven't seen, that you've seen the
Mhm.
majority of them. I have not. Like for example, I would have liked to have seen Godzilla -1 because I'm hearing some
Or
really
The
great
Boy and the
sell.
Heron.
Yeah, The Boy and the Heron being
Uh,
another one. Exactly, those are two films I would have loved to have seen to
sure,
really
sure.
form an opinion on. Because again, I hear great. Godzilla Minus One sounds like has an excellent sell to it that makes me really want to see that movie. But sadly, no path to that at this moment.
All right.
So some wait and see on some of this. But generally, that's how I'm feeling. I don't think this was the most razzle dazzle year for movies, and and we'll see. I don't know how much that's in relation to the pandemic, and we're kind of in the midst of that.
Or the
In
strikes more specifically
well,
this year.
well, also, I mean, yes, there's the strikes, but even beyond the strikes, there's still like this is the year where we were kind of like strategically starved during the pandemic to they were kind of filtering certain things out, and we might be reaching a period of recovery and kind of the come down of okay, we kind of ran out of stuff and we've been kind of saving the really good stuff. We've been sparsing it out, and this is we're getting a year where maybe that's why it's not as wall to wall as previous years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an embarrassment of riches like past years may have been.
Well, again, I feel like it's a matter of perspective, because for me,
well, yeah, again, we're not all.
All right. Keeper Colby says best since 2019, which I agree with. I know you don't. Okay, let's just get into it.
We do have the banners, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. That's what I was concerned. Okay.
Right. Okay. Honorable mentions. Do you want to go first?
Would you like me to go first?
If you don't mind, I actually would like to go first.
Then go first.
I can
go
crack
nuts.
these out really quick.
I don't care. Go nuts.
Because I swear to God, Dragon, I didn't intend for this to happen. I wasn't even intentionally thinking of it this way. But my 3 honorable mentions all happen to be Netflix movies, so I think I'll just crack them out really quick.
One question.
In no particular order, we have Nimona, which is obviously very, very great to see that film actually see the light of day. There's a little bit of unpolished animation here and there. I'm not exactly the craziest fan of the style, but I love the character work. The plot is good, but not razor sharp. So it's there's 1 or 2 hangups I have with the movie that keep it out of the top 20, but still very, very memorable animated film, very inspiring that it actually even saw the light of day. Next up, we have Leave the World Behind, which is a very polarizing movie. I personally really, really dug it. It's for me, it's kind of like the M. Night Shyamalan movie this year that I wanted Knock at the Cabin to be. It just had all the Shyamalan vibes, and I really, really was on board with it. The ending is a little stupid. Yes, I'll admit that. There are some stupid elements to the movie for sure. And overall, I just thought there were 20 other movies this year that were a little bit stronger than it, but I still really liked it a lot. And then my next one, my last honorable mention, is The Killer, which I really, Dragon, this was the one that was the hardest to take off of the top 20. I had it on the top 20 for a long time. But ultimately, I really dig the style of this. I really dig David Fincher going back to his roots of having the unreliable narrator, something that he really perfected with Fight Club. And this just plays around. The reason why this isn't on the top 20 is that, frankly, if it wasn't for the narration, this movie would be very boring. But the narration is on there, and it was quite memorable for me, but just not quite enough to eke into the top 20 for me. But again, it was the closest movie to get to coming into the top 20. All right. Let's see. Kogias says, I like Nimona too. It was done by the creator of the She-Ra reboot that I loved. Okay, Dragon, honorable mentions.
Real quick, do you like the red, or should we do gold?
Let's do gold. I'll switch to gold.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so also something I want to mention too, just kind of with my parameters this year. I didn't want to be ruled by guilt this year. So, I made some hard choices with the franchising stuff where I wasn't going to cut certain things breaks. I just kind of looked at it and because I was just a little fed up with it this year. A lot of things.
There's at least one movie on this that I see on the thumbnail that's not on my list that I'm kind of surprised made your list pleasantly. So,
yeah. But that's what I'm saying. For example, the stuff that I'm sure Code Geass is going to be really upset about.
No. Don't do it, Dragon. Don't do it.
Well, no. I just mean certain things pretty much majority of the I guess 2/3 of the MCU stuff did not make the list because again, look, I don't want to come down on Ant-Man Quantumania like a lot of people. I don't, but when I look at that movie, it's even though I love the character of Ant-Man, I love what we've done in the MCU, it's just, I can't, it feels almost like with those movies and The Flash, and honestly, all the DC stuff and this, it's as much as I can find good things in those movies and things I like about those movies, when I look at them, though, I just don't want to reward them for falling short in areas where they really shouldn't have fallen short in.
Now,
Okay,
Kokia, you are about as big of a Flash fan as I can find, and I totally respect that. So for me, I really actually dug the first act of The Flash. I just think it's kind of like, for me, it's a classic example of a movie that, as it goes on, the wheels kind of start to spin off of it. But I do respect that you like it as much as you do. So
that's what I'm saying. In past years, I would have found a way to put them on the list, but this year I just wanted some variety, and I didn't want to have to look at it and just try and make excuses for the things that are falling short. Where the other films I had, I don't think they fell as short comparatively. Where it's like, like you look at Ant-Man, it's like, again, we get really lost in the quantum realm. We do all that stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like, and find things to like about them. And for example, the Marvels. I was very tempted to put the Marvels even in honorable mentions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, guys,
It has some really good stuff in it, but it's also got some super messy stuff.
It just feels like there's stuff. There should be no excuse that, come on, guys. No one was expecting much from the Marvels, and you're very close to it, but they're dropping the ball in the villain plots. I'm just a little. The point being, I wanted to kind of cut the cord a little on some of the franchises stuff. Otherwise, they're not going to learn, Tiki.
I hear you. All right, so honorable mentions, Dragon. Let's roll through them pretty quick.
Okay. Well, I had The Killer, my honorable mention number 3. I mean, look,
cool.
It's well made. It's fun seeing Fincher do the revenge film. I love the execution. The only vague issue I have with The Killer is that it feels like it came out a little too late. We're like, this is like we're in like it feels like Fincher would have made a bigger splash had it come out like before like years ago for Fincher.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that statement. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think if it would have came out around the time of like Fight Club and Seven, it would have been like on near the same level of popularity as
like that's what I'm saying. This is a pre-Dexter show.
Right.
The pre-Dexter movie, essentially. Before the Dexter show. This is kind of like in that vein of like something you'd like to see that feels in line with that. That would have been like, man, Fincher's really laid out something here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Creed 3. Strong directorial
obviously a big asterisk there for one thing.
Yeah. Anyway, Creed 3. Look, strong directorial debut for Michael B. Jordan. Solid film. Here's the thing. It's a good capper for a trilogy, in quotes, because I have a feeling it's not going to stay a trilogy, even though it probably should. It's just, the fact that there's no Rocky in this movie, and it just lacks stay power. It's like I can't call this one to mind as much as I can the first Creed or the second Creed, even.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like that's what I'm saying. No one's talking about Creed 3, and I know in part because of the bad guy in Creed, but even so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the bad guy in Creed 3 is pretty much like he's a wall of meat that he's fighting with vague issues. Just vague issues of like, okay, so he's from Donnie's past and he's fighting him, but we know he doesn't have a connection to Clubber Lang like everyone was really hoping for. I'm not saying we needed to do that, but I'm just saying because of that, that's the risk that you run. It's like
that's what we need to do for the next Creed movie is bring back Mr. T, man.
Yeah, but there shouldn't be a next Creed movie.
I know.
I can respect them not bringing Rocky. I can respect this film, but it's not going to make the top 20 for those reasons. Okay, last one. This one was very close. Honestly, this and number 20 were kind of in kind of a swapping position almost. Leo.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing, Leo.
I still need to catch up on it. I probably will in January.
Leo is here purely, and this is kind of like a theme that's on the list for a few places. Leo is there purely because it's kind of fascinating in that it's a film that I did not expect to be good at all based on how it looks from the
That's pretty much the narrative for that movie just in general.
But that's what I'm saying. There is a genuine attempt here, and the only reason it can't be in the top 20 is that it didn't need to be a musical and didn't need a liar reveal. If they took those things out, it would have made the top 20. It's that good. If they just could have, if they could have like sanded off those two elements. I don't know. I mean, it's a genuine attempt by Adam Sandler, and there's some charm there. I don't know. It's cute.
All right. Okay, so let's get right into it then. Dragon, I'm definitely gonna have a lot more to say on my top 10 for my 20 through 11. I'm gonna go as quickly as I can. If anything else, just for the benefit of time here, but let's get into it. Number 20 for me, the film with my personal claim to fame being the closest that I've ever come to vomiting in a movie theater. It is Saw X. And man, honestly, man, I wasn't even planning on seeing Saw X because I have seen the first Saw movie and literally none of the sequels. So I really, and Saw is a franchise that's very steeped in lore. But this got such good buzz. Everyone was saying it's the best in the franchise. You got to see it. The horror movie community was the buzz, and it definitely lived up to that hype. And even as someone who has very passing familiarity with the franchise, I was able to follow it just fine. Tobin Bell absolutely kills it as Jigsaw. From what I understand, this is the first and only time that he's basically the protagonist of one of these movies. He's still doing fucked up shit, but he's doing messed up shit to really bad people. And so that's kind of the gimmick here. And the traps in this movie are just very visceral and very, very memorable for me. A lot more memorable than the stuff that was in the first Saw movie, which, is to be expected, but just seriously creative, messed up sequences. A genuinely pretty compelling plot line with Jigsaw as the actual hero. Some pretty hateable villains. I will say that it's only number 20 because I think the ending is actually pretty weak. By the last trap in the movie is by far the weakest and least memorable and least creative, which is just a very odd choice. But yeah, other than that, it was a hell of a ride, and I'm definitely going to. It was a very, very memorable in-theater experience for me, if anything else. All right, number 20 for you.
Right. Number 20 for me, I won't lie to you, in part put on there just for the running gag of it all, but I put Old Dads at number 20.
I respect that.
That's what I'm saying. It was kind of wavering on the honorable mentions, but at the end of the day, I kind of put one on there just for me. It's just look, old dads is an honest laugh. It's basically, I think the best way of putting why I liked it so much is that it's basically F is for Family minus the weird filler stuff I don't like from F is for Family.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty direct in terms of there are a couple gags that are for example, Carnival doesn't really get a lot to do in the movie, which is kind of a shame. Or I'm not crazy about a lot of the Carnival stuff in that movie, but still, it's Carnival. I like the guy. The fact is, again, it's Bill Burr's stand up as a movie, and it's kind of Bill Burr mixed with a bit of a Curb Your Enthusiasm approach, which I really appreciate. Just basically Bill Burr's getting a chance to rant on people and kind of call out PC culture in an honest and funny way. Yeah, I mean, it could have been that. Look, definitely it could have been a little stronger, but then again, I don't think we're really expecting much with Old Dads. Just expecting to laugh, and I think it delivered. So there you go.
And it also delivered, weirdly, probably the most memorable running gag of the year for us.
So I mean, in part, I don't know. We got a lot of mileage at Old Dads. Okay, I guess we can maybe move it from number 1 honorable mentions to number 20. Let's put it on the poster.
All right. Colby says after 7 bad Saw movies, Saw X has me very pleased. Kogia says Old Dad's only at number 20. I was expecting it to be much higher. All righty. Okay, number 19 for me. This is definitely not your type of movie. It's a very kind of small scale movie. It had a lot of Oscar buzz when it first came out. I think a lot of that buzz is kind of diminished a little bit, but I'm still kind of rooting for it. It's Past Lives, which is just a very intimate romantic drama, very kind of just adult movie. It's the kind of it's one of those they don't make them like this anymore kind of movies. And for me, I just found it to be very memorable, specifically because it's one of those sort of it's a love triangle technically, but it is a love triangle where every person is likable and in the right. And specifically, I love it because what they do with the husband character, who's kind of like in any other movie, and he even pretty much like directly acknowledges this. In any other movie, the husband character would be like the douchebag villain of the story that we're rooting, who's basically like the obstacle that we're rooting for the the main heroine to leave to get with her childhood lover, her childhood sweetheart. But instead, this dude is genuinely like the most likable, most compassionate, and most charismatic person in the whole movie. And I just love that twist on that kind of character archetype. It's a very subtle little movie. Like I said, I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for it at the Oscars. I think when it first came out, it had a big groundswell, and I just think other stuff has kind of like eclipsed it. But it's still very good for what it is. Very memorable ending. Honestly, a really memorable cold open as well. So yeah, great performances all around. Just a really nice movie. I know it's a neat movie, Dragon. I don't know. All right, number 19 for you.
The Family Plan.
The Family Plan. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, admittedly, it's a bit of a clone of Nobody, but it's a road movie. So in a sense, it's kind of like the sequel we were.
I was going to say, yeah,
yeah. In a way, I mean, they're not driving an RV, but seriously, I think you'd really like this. It's a lot of fun. It's got good action. It's
I didn't like Nobody as much as you did.
Well, no, I'm not. Okay, let me put it this way. I'm saying it's like one of those things where you have an action movie like a John Wick, and then you get the spin-offs that are basically them people trying to do their own version of that. So it's not literally like Nobody again, but it's in the sense of you'd like it because it's Mark Wahlberg doing comedy. So Mark Wahlberg is essentially the Hutch Mansell-esque character. He is an ex-government assassin. He's but the idea is like he is not he's not really dissatisfied with the family life. He's like a really good dad. And he gets found out because of social media, and he basically is taking the family on the road to protect them. And so he's kind of like he's working up the nerve to tell them what the deal with them is, but he has to kind of protect them without them knowing.
Kind of sounds like Spy Kids played straight.
I mean, I guess I don't know if Spy Kids. I don't know if that's a
what's the angle of the parents being secretly spies. I don't know.
Sure, well, maybe. Again, I think you'd have to kind of see it to really get an idea. But the point being, again, it's there's actually some competent writing on the family here in terms of like how he's dealing with the family and everything. Like we don't do a lot of the usual hackneyed stuff. Like I think you might like the brother sister dynamic. I don't know. But anyway, so the only problem I have with this movie is, and again, it's kind of a struggle with 2023 overall. There's a lot of the villains have been coming up short a bit this year. It's been kind of a thing. We haven't really gotten a number of really good villains. I'm not saying we don't have good villains, but just they're kind of few and far between, and because of that, we have weak villain plots in a lot of movies. And we got that here. It just feels like okay. I'm loving Wahlberg. He's going around. He's kind of secretly fighting people while he's trying to be a good dad, and he actually is a really good dad. So that's a lot of fun. Just the train killer, but he's a good father. I don't know. It's a nice and simple sell. It's a good action movie. I like any excuse of Mark Wahlberg doing comedy. It's actually funny, and I think this is one of those cases.
All right. Okay, number 18. This is probably the first movie that came out this year where as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely going on the top 20 somewhere. And it is a movie that not only was I like pretty actively not looking forward to it and just knew that my grandma would want to see it with me, but I'm pretty sure I actually used it as like a joke. Like, hell yeah, we're talking about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So yeah, my number 18 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I think this movie is like about as perfect of a coming of age movie as you can get, honestly. I think again, kind of like something like Past Lives, where Past Lives is very much kind of just like a very adult romantic drama. This is this is the kind of coming of age story that you just don't really see. It's just kind of like a, you know, a school year in the life of this girl. And it's a kind of movie where it's like, you know, like you would think that I wouldn't have a lot to connect to with it, but the movie is pretty universal in that way. It's like, even if you aren't the target demographic for it, even if you can't directly relate to the experiences, you've been, you know, middle school is hell for kids. And that's basically like, regardless if you're a boy or a girl, it's going to be a fucking rough time in your life. And I can certainly relate to that. More importantly, though, I think Benny Safdie as the father really, really shined. And also, God, I need to look up who did the mother. I know it's not Jennifer Garner, but for some reason I want to say it's Jennifer Garner. It's Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams. I get that. I always get those two mixed up for some reason. Benny Safdie and Rachel McAdams, and also Kathy Bates is the grandmother. All like that is like a really, really strong fundamental like core to this movie, is those three performances really holding up everything else. The child actors are definitely great as well. You know, very natural. But the adults in the movie are very much kind of doing the heavy lifting dramatically. Their plot lines are probably the most interesting ones, and they definitely drew me into the movie. Like, if it wasn't for them, I would probably respect this movie. But if it was just the stuff with Margaret and her friends and the, you know, like, oh, she likes a boy and, you know, that kind of stuff, like, it'd be like, all right, well, that was cute for what it was. But I think it's the stuff with the parents and the grandparents and the family that really elevates this for me. So yeah, this is just a high recommendation for me. I really, really think this was a pretty special little movie, and I hope that it's one of those movies that kind of becomes a classroom staple. All right, number 18 for you.
The Burial.
The Burial. Okay.
This is a very under the radar Amazon biopic. It's basically, you know, I mentioned this on Memoirs a while back. Essentially with everything on our list for the most part. It's basically Jamie Foxx as this Saul Goodman-esque lawyer who's helping Tommy Lee Jones, who owns a funeral home. Well, a chain of funeral homes, like a name like funeral home that's across across the land, and he's he's a good businessman. He's a moral guy, and yeah, it's a solid, unique legal drama. Essentially, you have kind of a contract law lawyer doing a you have a personal injury lawyer doing a contract case, which he's not really suited for because he's all razzle dazzle and kind of scare tactics in the settling, which is very Saul Goodman esque. He's like the guy who gives you like the fake neck brace to wear in the court sort of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have him, and he's very much like a very Johnny Cochran kind of vibe about him as well. So he's very he's very showy. And yeah, he's kind of humbled in seeing that, again, the guy goes on a bit of an arc in helping this Tommy Lee Jones character. And Tommy Lee Jones, I think he acts the heck out of this. He does a really good job. Like he's not phoning it in. Like he very justifiably could at this point in his career. He's like, okay, Tommy, look a little crusty. Could you do that for it? Okay, yeah. But yeah, again, as I said, it's for me, it took a minute to get invested in. It's not that it wasn't really in from the beginning, but I think it kind of takes a while to get settled in. And as it goes further and further, there's like a build to it, and that build, as it goes on, you get drawn into the case because we've seen we've seen a bunch of legal. We watched the whole show.
There's
about
going
a
to
lawyer.
be a really big courtroom drama on my list, and I will say it did make the top 10. So,
but that's what I'm saying. You and I, we've seen God knows how many legal procedurals,
sure.
and legal dramas, and the court case movies and everything. We even got like one around the corner with Eastwood, so we got them still coming. But yeah, this is just, you get drawn into the case, and I love the third act of this movie. I love the third act when we finally get to kind of like as tradition would give you, have like some aha moments, and then honestly, it's less an aha moment. It's kind of like a set. It's kind of like not the it's kind of the aftermath of the aha moment, which is real. It's a really well played scene. So there's a Bill Camp plays essentially the bad guy of this movie. He's really good. You remember Bill Camp from Queen's Gambit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Scheibel.
Mhm.
Yeah, he plays the bad guy in this, and he's oh man, his scene in the third act is like, oh man, like between him and Jamie Foxx, it's just wonderful when he's on the stand and Jamie Foxx is grilling him, and it's oh yeah, it's good
Nice.
stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Burial's worth a watch. No one else is gonna watch it because again, it kind of got buried within all the other stuff Amazon does, and I think Amazon's had kind of a bad year in getting their movies and stuff watched. I mean, with the exception of like their shows like Reacher, everyone's gonna watch Reacher. No one's gonna watch The Burial.
Or like their 1-2 punch of like cynical superhero shows.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, everyone's gonna go to those, and I don't know qualms of them going to those shows, but it feels like what, guys, The Burial's really solid. Give The Burial a watch, man. No
You
one's
know
like
what's funny is that I kind of feel like the Tick died for the sins of The Boys and Invincible.
Yeah, but
The
hey, I
Tick
mean,
was like the most earnest, like heartfelt superhero thing ever.
yeah.
And then it's like, nope, that's not our brand.
I mean, look, I don't want to look. I'm not. At least the Tick got that wonderful moment with Spoon at the end.
Yeah,
The
I
Tick
know,
got
but I'm still bitter about it.
I'm bitter about it too, but I ain't complaining that we got Invincible though. I mean, like the sacrificing the Tick for the boys is one thing, but I mean, if you're telling me we get Invincible from the Tick, at least the Tick got an ending.
Fair enough.
Bit of a cliffhanger, but it got an ending. However, anyway, so also the critics love this movie apparently. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Dragon, my number 17. This is gonna piss people off that it's so low on my list. You want to guess what it is? It's something that is pretty beloved from this year that I really, really liked. Like, there's definitely certain elements of it that I love, but ultimately there's a couple things holding it back for me. You want to take a guess?
Well, I mean, it's not Barbie, right?
No, close.
Oh God.
Just tell you.
Yeah, just tell
All
me.
right. Across the Spiderverse.
Oh,
I know, man. I know. I feel so bad.
Tiki.
Okay, you know how
Number 17 though. Not even the top the top 10.
You know how I felt about that cliffhanger. It's not the fact that it was a cliffhanger. I love cliffhangers. Like Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, one of my favorite movie cliffhangers of all time, and it piles on like 3 of them. The problem that I have with Across the Spider-Verse, just structurally, fundamentally, is that it feels like half a story. I was not prepared for the story to end where it does, and not in like an "oh, you've got me" kind of way. More of like a wait, that literally felt like 2 acts of a 3-act story kind of way. Obviously, Dragon, obviously the animation in this thing is sublime. Like, there is so much to love about this thing for sure. Honestly, thinking about it still, it probably is a little low, yes. I will admit I am a little bit like over the multiverse superhero thing, and while it is explored very well here for sure, it's still like a little bit of a factor of like I wasn't as Dragon, I wasn't as taken by this movie outside of the animation as I was by the original. Like, I think the original is a very, very fully fleshed out story and characters and everything. And this is, again, it's a great first half, and it introduces a lot of cool elements to it. And the art style is definitely like the art style just straight up feels like it's like the jump from like PS1 to PS3 almost, it's like but yeah, I don't know. I don't have a strong reason for this being as low as it was, as low as it is, other than just the fact that for me personally, it is a very strong year for movies. So again, still very, very, very great. But okay, well, it's your opinion, Tiki. I haven't seen the second Spider-Verse film yet. Seiko Gias. I liked the first film, but I didn't love it in the same way that other people did. LAB says, I really like Spiderverse, but I really don't like the trend of Part 1 movies either. Kogias says, I believe that Harry Potter started that trend with Deathly Hallows Part 1, which is actually my favorite. Fucking A, Kogi. That's just yet another hot take of yours that catches me off guard, but I respect the hell out of it. You are full of hot takes, my friend. The Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 being your favorite Potter movie. That is I am genuinely fascinated by that. I don't even like it is a very different Potter movie, so I respect that opinion. Anyways, so yeah, Dragon, I know that this isn't a popular choice for me to put it this low. What can I say? I like auteur, like kind of original movies more than I like franchise stuff. Um, that being said, stay tuned because my number one might surprise you. Anyways,
Yeah.
all right, number 17 on your end.
Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget.
Okay.
So Chicken Run. Here's the thing. This is a recent watch for me. It was it was years in the making. It's mainly here because you know what? A lot of hard work goes into the Aardman productions, and there's something to appreciate there, like just the tactile filmmaking of the plasticine and everything. It just there's here's the thing. It did feel like a proper continuation, and I think there's a lot of clever logic here where essentially the sell of the movie is it's kind of a logical progression of okay, so we tried we tried the chicken pot pie thing in the first movie, which again it's really the great escape in chicken pot pie is essentially the machine that was coming to the farm, and we had the clever logic of like okay, so some times passed, Rocky and Ginger they become parents, which is actually they're pretty good. They actually do a nice parental kind of they have a nice parental kind of little nuclear family going on
I
there.
did
Well,
hear that
basically,
Bella Ramsey is the daughter, which definitely kind of intrigues me.
yeah, she's good in it too. The
Mhm.
daughter, Molly's good. Apparently, in the making, originally Molly's supposed to be a boy, and then they kind of when the movie took so long, they kind of reinvented like let's give her a daughter, let's give him a daughter, and I think sounds like it was a good choice.
Mhm.
Anyway, so the clever logic is okay. What if, hence the title, Dawn of the Nugget? It's like, what if we bridge in the fast food essentially? What if we bridge into the chicken nugget? And and it's there's some really clever things about the movie. Here's the only problem I have with it, though. I think this is a very competently made movie. It's very well animated. Everything tracks. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this movie. The only problem is that every time I watch it and every time I sit with it and just kind of look back to it, it makes me want to rewatch the original. You know,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was worried
I
about,
mean that
honestly.
yes, I understand, but only because this movie does give you it's kind of it accomplishes the original accomplished more with less razzle dazzle. This movie has razzle dazzle to the gills, and that's not a bad thing because again, it's like, man, look at all the work that went into this, and that's the impressive factor about the movie. It's like,
Sure.
man, this looks great. It's not a bad story at all, and I mean, I like revisiting the Chicken Run world, but it's like, you know what? It does make you wonder. Do we need to do all that? I mean, it's like we don't. The movie, you don't need this movie at all, and you realize that while you're watching it. But it's a nice movie, and it's something to I don't know. It's something to appreciate, but it's not at all necessary. That's kind of the thing. We don't need to revisit Chicken Run, but it'll remind you how much you like the original and like, hey, a little continuation. It's like basically Armin went out of their way for a reminder to watch the original Chicken Run. That's kind of what it feels like. But you kind of have to. Man, they spent a lot of money and they essentially have put their company in jeopardy, which I mean is sad, but with the whole plasticine shortage. But
Mhm.
still.
Have you heard the premise of the new Wallace and Gromit movie they're making?
No, I haven't. What is it?
It's basically a social commentary on Wallace growing too reliant on technology,
Ooh.
which I love that premise. I actually like that premise a lot more than I like just like, yeah, he's a werewolf. All right. So forget that not all of the original cast members for the first Chicken Run came
Yeah,
back.
that is
None of
that's a
them
big
came
thing.
back, right?
Well, that's the big thing with the new Chicken Run movies that they were kind of ageist to the movie. I mean, I could hear there's an argument for it, but by the same token, it was
And
just
also,
like
no
they.
one actually wants Mel Gibson in a movie these days. Let's
I
be
mean,
honest.
he's been popping up in movies though, so I don't know if that's
Well, he
necessarily
was in
true.
that oh god, what was it? that one that he did that where he was the crooked cop. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, that's the I know what you're talking about. That's
I forget
the
what it's called.
no, I know it. Dragged across concrete. That's what it
Yes,
is.
yes, yes, yeah.
I was gonna say asphalt, but it was like no, dragged against concrete. But yeah,
He
so there
was
was.
genuinely good in that, but I think he's playing a corrupt cop, so it's kind of par
I
for the
mean, but
course.
also like Daddy's Home too. He was fun in Daddy's Home too. Plus he was in the movie with
I
Frank
forgot he
Grillo.
was in Daddy's Home too. That's like a weirdly high profile movie for him to
And
be
paired with John Lithgow.
in.
But yeah, he was also in I still love Lithgow's introduction in that movie. It's so priceless to me. But anyway, yeah, he was in Boss Level. He was the bad guy in Boss. I don't know. Gibson keeps appearing, but again, the main reason I think it was less a whole like Gibson kind of like having the cloud on his head. I think it was more as the issue of they kept saying, and I kind of hear the argument is that so many years have passed. The voice actors, their voices kind of sound older, and they need to be parents. So would it sound? I don't know. But then again, they're parents though, so they would sound older. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
right.
having issue with. I just like I don't know. Just don't age the designs. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll definitely check it out at some point. I wasn't like it wasn't something that I was like, jumping up and down to see when it first came out, but
I'm just saying, like, you need a comfort watch at the very least, you know.
sure, sure, sure. All right, number 16. Dragon, you were very close here because my number 16 is in fact Barbie.
Okay, that's fair. That's fine.
Yeah. And you know what, Dragon? It's one of those things where I did rewatch this with my mom, and I hate to say it,
And hold up.
it didn't hold up quite as well as I was hoping it
Yeah, the
would.
third act crashing. See, for me, I can't get into the third act of Barbie at all. How do you feel about it?
Well, the thing with the third act, I feel like it's kind of a mixed bag because I love the musical numbers in the third act. But as far as the plot, I think it absolutely falls apart, and that is the problem.
Mm.
But I love the push. Like I want to push you around. I actually think that is a better sequence than I'm just Ken for me personally. I love the ruse that the Barbies play on the Kens at the campfire and everything. And but yeah, I don't know. I look at the end of the day, I just think this movie is like it is such like there's no way I could have left it off of the top 20 just because it is the movie of 2023. And I think like hands down, I think Ryan Gosling and the production design are like the two best elements of the movie. Like I like Margot Robbie in the movie a lot, but there's a couple moments that are great with her. Like the moment with her and the old woman on the park bench is kind of like the big standout performance wise with her. But obviously Gosling steals the show. And the production design is just pretty top tier all the way around. But yeah, the plot is definitely messy, and honestly, the social satire isn't quite as sharp as I thought it was the first time I saw it. I will agree to that. Like some of it is a little on the nose, sure, but I still think it's just such a unique movie and such kind of like it's. I just think it's super cool that a movie like this, that yeah, it is technically based on a big IP, but it is also very auteur driven with fucking Noah Baumbach helped write this movie, Dragon. Like that dude is not very mainstream. So it's I mean, I think the most mainstream thing he's done is Marriage Story, which is pretty much just kind of like been doomed to be meme fodder and not that much else in the public consciousness nowadays.
It's meme fodder.
It is Dragon that one Adam Driver's facial reactions in Marriage Story are big memes nowadays. Yes. That is pretty much the public collective memory of that movie.
Oh, he's got a memeable face though. Is that really against the movie, or is it just how Adam Driver looks? He just looks like a meme.
It's specifically like how over the top his performance is in that movie.
Hmm.
Anyways, so yeah, I definitely think it's kind of like it's such an interesting kind of like between this and Asteroid City, where Asteroid City clearly I liked a lot more than this. That's definitely going to be in my top 10. Probably not a big surprise for you. But it's really interesting how both of them kind of like have that Wes Anderson kind of vibe to them, at least in the production design. So yeah, just very obviously a big kind of touchstone movie for pop culture, and hopefully a movie that's going to kind of lead the way. This and Godzilla minus one, I feel like, are big kind of like touchstones as far as like Hollywood needs to like kind of like sit up and take notes. Okay, Jacob Weil is pointing out that Noah Baumbach co-wrote Madagascar 3, which is a fact that I did not know. That is actually wild. The Afro Circus movie of all things.
One
Yes,
that's got to
LAB.
eat too, you know.
Yeah, yes, LAB, the movie where Black Widow and Kylo Ren get divorced. That one. Those two characters. Okay, Kogia says, I love the third act. America Ferrer's speech is incredible and the ending is emotional. The ending. Okay, I don't like the fact that it ends on such an overt kind of gag. I mean, the stuff with the Ruth at the end is certainly emotional, yeah, but I don't like the end of the movie. I don't like the gynecologist thing. I think it's like kind of a cheap gag to cut.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very.
But Kogias again. I think Dragon and I are actually kind of in the minority of like I said. I really like certain elements of the third act. I just kind of think the plot kind of gets away from itself a little bit in the third act. All right, Dragon number 16 for you.
Quiz Lady.
All right, yeah, I need to see this. You've been hyping
Yeah,
it up.
you really do, man. That's what I'm saying. This to me, in kind of the Leo space, but a little higher, is that I was so pleasantly surprised how much I enjoyed this, man. Aquafina actually delivers for a change, you know. She's the straight man, the Sandro, and I love me some Sandro. She absolutely killed it in this movie. You know, she just plays such a relatable mess. It's so funny. But yeah, it's just here's the thing. The reason this isn't higher is just the reason for the adventure is very thin. But at the core, this movie is like a celebration of how we all love game shows, and it's a parody of it's kind of a loving parody of Jeopardy, and like you know we have like Will Ferrell as the Alex Trebek character, and we have you know we have essentially an evil Ken Jennings with Jason Schwartzman, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that right there is probably like the big sell for me.
So I'm saying he basically plays if Ken Jennings were actually evil, it would be, be Jason Schwartzman in this film. So because of that, the third act it's somewhat of a road movie, getting her on the show to solve their really thinly written kind of problem for the movie. But that's the thing. So the third act of this movie is magic, Tiki. The third act's magic. There's this beautiful scene that Will Ferrell has as the Alex Trebek figure with Aquafina. By the bow ties, I'll say that much. By the bow ties, Tiki. And it's just this really lovely scene that the two of them share. The ending is, I think, just right. The ending's just right. Also, in the movie, last Paul Rubens role.
Hmm.
And it's a nice gag too. They gave him a nice joke to go out on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. Okay, Kogia says Aquafina is actually in 2 films in his top 10 this year.
Well, is one of them Quiz Lady?
I'm assuming one of them is The Little Mermaid. Colby says Quiz Lady was the single, and I do mean single, Aquafina role that did not make me want to end it all this year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, she's really good in this movie, you know?
LEB says Aquafina can act. She's just not a good voice actor. I agree to that.
You know why? It's not even that she's not a good voice actor. It's that they keep making her do shtick. They keep making her do, like, poking her with a stick. Hey, Aquafina, do Aquafina shtick.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you know, be funny, be loud, be abrasive. Do it.
Yeah, with the first time I ever saw Aquafina was in the Farewell, which is like her performance in that movie is so weirdly polar opposite to the shtick that you're talking about.
I don't know if I've seen her in. I think I've seen her in something before Shang-Chi, but I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. She was actually pretty fun in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She's good. She's good in Shang-Chi.
It was kind of the same shtick, but I feel like it worked for that character.
That's what I'm saying. It's like an introduction to Aquafina. It's like, okay, her shtick, like it paired with a good character, is like that's not
Right,
bad. Like
right.
hers, like second, like her paired with this character, and then
And
Last
you know
Dragon
me, I
essentially,
love a good platonic friendship.
yeah, and then we kind of do it again in Rye. It's like, okay, I think we're maybe sensing a pattern here, and then it just kind of goes on, and there's Scuttle, and then there's Renfield, and it's the same thing.
Oh man, she ruined Renfield.
But you
Just
see what I?
straight up.
Well, it doesn't help that
Well, her
she's
and one other guy. I
well,
will
it doesn't help
provide
that she's
that.
incorporated in that guy's plot. So that I think it's more that guy than her. But yeah,
Right, right. That's fair.
yeah. All right.
All right. Colby, I forgot that she was in Neighbors too. I actually really like Neighbors too, so she didn't bother me in that. But
Yeah.
okay, anyways, Dragon, let's see. This is your number 16, so
And
let's see
so
what's my
we're going
top
on
10.
to your number 15 then, Tiki.
All right, my number 15 is going to be Blackberry. Did you get around to seeing this?
Is it where's it streaming?
I actually don't know. I think you might have to rent it.
That's the thing. I'll probably have to wait on that one. But no, I have not seen Blackberry.
Okay, so yeah, this is just a very, very good little movie, under the radar for sure. It kind of reminds me of, like, at first it feels like just a parody of The Social Network, where it's like, hey, like, what if instead of following something that became like a huge success, we follow something that became like a huge failure. But Dragon, the sell of this movie for me, why I think you need to see it, is that Glenn Howerton essentially plays an incompetent Ray Kroc.
Nice.
Where, like, he is the hen in the the wolf in the hen house who gets into the company, and the only thing is he legitimately does not know what he's doing. He thinks he knows what he's doing, but he does not know what he's doing. And the dynamic between him and Jay Baruchel is great. I think this is probably the best performance I've ever seen from Jay Baruchel. So yeah, I think, like, stylistically, it's probably the least memorable movie on my top 20. Like, really stylistically, it's not doing anything too impressive or crazy with the camera or anything. It's very much just kind of like static, almost kind of documentary kind of shots. But, that's not a bad thing for what it is. Like, honestly, that's kind of like what separates it from The Social Network, though, is obviously, like, with something like The Social Network, you've got such an ambitious visual component to that film that Blackberry just doesn't have. But yeah, Glenn Howerton is probably the reason to see the movie, and it's got a really great ending. I think the ending kind of rivals the ending of The Social Network, and actually is kind of, for me, it's a very similar ending. All right, reading the comments here. How did she do in Renfield? She was in it. We know she's in it, but she didn't ruin Renfield. I don't know. I don't know. Jacob's disagreeing with our assessment of Renfield, but well, like you said, Dragon, it was less Aquafina and more Ben Schwartz. Like,
Yeah, I don't say Aquafina. I like Aquafina's dynamic with Renfield in that movie. I just don't like the fact the reason we have her hanging around him is that guy.
Jacob, I definitely wouldn't argue with you about How to Train Your Dragon being his best work. I'm just saying this is probably his best live action performance. All right.
He was not funny in that movie. Come on. Look, you can like Ben Schwartz, but don't tell me he was good in Renfield. Come on.
All right. Don't start an argument with the guy.
Oh, he started it.
Oh my god. Yeah, Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage were obviously the best parts of that movie.
If they were the only things in that movie, might have made the list for all I don't know.
I kind of feel like Nicolas Cage should have been in more of it, essentially.
Well, yeah.
All right, Jacob, Dragon, you're both pretty. Let's move on. Dragon, you're number 15.
Dumb Money.
All right, actually, that's kind of funny that Dum Money and Blackberry ended up in the same slot, because it's a very similar movie.
Yeah, I love how Craig Gillespie makes a movie. I like how he directs. You know, it's a tricky subject. You know, making with all the stock talk and I can see the challenge that Gillespie might have had making this movie. And I think in comparison to his other work like I, Tanya, it does fall maybe a little short, but it's still I think it's impressively made. I think he made a potentially very boring topic as entertaining as you possibly could make this topic. Um, I think it also it very authentically represents kind of the pandemic and like post pandemic living.
For
It's
sure, for
got
sure.
a great cast. It's a David and Goliath kind of a story of Wall Street. It's one of the stranger in fiction kind of biopics where it's just like, hey, I genuinely like the stock, it just kind of caused this movement of everyone just sticking it to the man and like very pro GameStop, you know. So
Yet,
yeah, it's
yet another Paul Dano performance that
yeah,
he's not going to get nominated for.
yeah, which is sad. That like, is he even in the running for this or no or
No, I mean technically he is Dragon, but there's just no way. The competition is
I mean,
so
has Dumb Money
big.
gotten any buzz for Dumb Money at all? Getting in there?
Not really, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame, but again, it's a risk about doing a movie about stock, though. No one really
Mhm.
cares unless you're Wolf of Wall Street. No one cares about
Or The Big
stocks.
Short.
Fair point. Yeah, unless I guess the big. Okay, fine. I guess you can count on one hand the amount of times people care about stock. But anyway, point being though, Dumb Money is very solidly made. And I like backing Gillespie. I like seeing what he does.
Colby, I do agree with your assessment here. I really like Dumb Money.
Mhm.
I do think it's probably out of the Gillespie stuff I've seen, like it's nowhere near as good as I, Tanya. Like
No,
not even in the same league,
no.
honestly. But he says my issue with Dumb Money was there were too many POVs. They
I
could have
think he's right about
with
that.
the
I think
characters. I totally agree.
yeah. Also,
All
not enough
right.
to not for you. I'm going to say that too. Also, what's with the weird CG pig? Anyway,
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Okay. All right, my number 14, Dragon. This is one I definitely think you should check out at some point once it comes onto a streaming service. I think you'd really enjoy it as it's very much kind of like it would make a great double feature with a movie from last year that you really loved. It is Priscilla.
yeah, I've been meaning to check out Priscilla, but I've not been able to find it, unfortunately. But yeah,
Yeah, that's totally fair. For me personally, I think Jacob Elordi, like he kind of stole this year between this and Saltburn. I think like I genuinely had no idea who this dude was before this movie, but like straight up Dragon, I think this is a like Austin Butler was really good in Elvis, don't get me wrong, but Austin Butler feels like he's trying to basically impersonate Elvis as much as he can. And Jacob Elordi, he's not trying to do an impersonation, but that's what I really like so much about the performance is that he more so just kind of like embodies Elvis's cool factor, but he also embodies like the terrible abusive husband elements. But the movie does a really great job of kind of showing us both sides of him and showing us how yeah, this relationship was incredibly problematic, Dragon. This woman was like 14 years old when Elvis first met her, and the movie does not shy away from the creep factor in that. But the movie also doesn't shy away from the fact that I hate to admit it, but weirdly enough, they do have chemistry with each other. Definitely not like romantic chemistry that you want to see, but you do see that they are kindred spirits and you do see how they would be drawn to each other. Um so yeah, the movie definitely does become kind of very claustrophobic as Priscilla's just living in Graceland, and it essentially becomes kind of like a movie about like how the paparazzi and the attention and the media on speculating on Elvis's various affairs when he's away making movies and stuff gets to her mentally. I think the pacing is a little like I think this could have easily been in my top 10 if the pacing was just a little bit more. Like, I think the first act of this movie is actually a little stronger because you're really seeing the relationship like form, and you're kind of like, like I said, there's that kind of like back and forth where it's like, obviously it's a very problematic relationship, but at the same time, you see how they would be drawn into each other. I think once the movie gets to Graceland about halfway through, it definitely slows down pretty deliberately. And so, because of that, a lot of the second half of the movie kind of blends together for me in my head. But yeah, it's still a very good movie, and I'm definitely rooting for it to at least pick up a couple acting nominations or something. It's definitely not going to play, big at the Oscars this year, but I definitely think it deserves. Kaylee Spaney as Priscilla. She plays Priscilla from, like I said, 14 years old at the start of the movie to like late 20s after she's already had Lisa Marie by the end of the movie, and you see that transformation, and it is very powerful and very impressive. It kind of reminds me more of like a stage performance, just in the way that like actors on stage can just do very subtle things with the way that they carry their body and stuff to make themselves appear older. So yeah. Okay. Kogia says Elvis made me pity Elvis. Priscilla made me despise Elvis.
I love how
Yeah.
simplistic, like just the title thing that is. Like Elvis, you're gonna like Elvis. Priscilla, you're gonna like Priscilla more than Elvis.
I mean, honestly, for me, the fact that they just kind of like they very much swept Priscilla under the rug in Elvis. You
Yeah,
gotta
they
admit
did.
that. Like,
Yeah,
that was
no,
one of my big issues with Elvis. I don't think she had nearly as prominent a role as she should have in that movie.
yeah. Dang it,
But
Baz.
and also, like, I'm sorry, I could not get over Tom Hanks' accent. I just
Again,
couldn't.
that's not Hanks's fault, though. It's the
I will
director's
never
fault.
rewatch that movie because of that damn accent.
But
I'm
again,
sorry.
it's not Hanks's fault. I want to be very clear. The accent, or no, that the director made him do that accent.
All right, that's fair, but it's still just terrible. All right, Kogia says the Academy probably would have taken Dumb Money more seriously if it was called Smart Money. Because they have dumb in the title, they probably just
Do you
assume it
think
was
the
a
Academy
dumb.
would that be that literally dumb that they would
Well,
they would
I
just like
think more
not give it mind?
realistically, it's just that it's like kind of like it was released in between the summer movies and the big Oscar push. So,
I mean, do you think the Academy like just like snubs based on name, based on titles
nah, not
sometimes?
really. I mean, I don't know. The Lego
Like,
movie, I
what's the
think, is the
dumbest
one
title that actually won an Oscar you can think of?
title.
Yeah, like the dumbest title, like the most like unappealing title that has won an Oscar.
Oh man, Dragon, that's a loaded question. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah,
I genuinely, I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
well, that's something to look into next time we do like an Oscar talk or something. Okay, well, anyway,
um. Okay, Little Blue says Elvis sadly did have some issues, and those who were close to him, especially Priscilla, knew this.
mhm.
I mean, I like I said, I don't think that Elvis and Priscilla is like completely irredeemable, just because I do think that the movie does make an attempt to show the sides of him that Priscilla would have been drawn to, but he is definitely predatory. He is definitely predatory. Colby's Suicide Squad is just the most ridiculous movie to have ever won an Oscar, just period, name or no name.
Well, that's a plus Suicide. Well, I think we're looking more for like like Best Picture and like a screenplay director.
Uh-huh.
But even
Makeup
so, I
is
mean,
always such a wild card. That's always the category where it's like anything can get into makeup.
but even so, I mean, Suicide Squad. Look. I like that. That's a Suicide Squad is a good title, but plus it's based on a really good idea. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that counts.
All right. So number 14 for you, Dragon.
Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares: The Robert Englund Story.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, definitely one to check out for me.
Again, this is a really good. This was a really good Screambox documentary. I'm pretty sure they were the ones that made this happen. Anyway, so it's great. The big sell for this one to me is that it's basically almost a Forrest Gump esque realization you have about Robert Englund. This guy, for years in the makeup chair, it's been a known thing. I remember them mentioning this way back there in the Never Sleep Again,
Mhm.
4-hour documentaries that Rob Riggle, he'll be in the makeup chair and he'll tell all his famous Hollywood stories to the makeup people and anyone who's going to listen around who's go on and on about them. And it's so funny. We kind of use that as the framing device here, where we kind of have England like tell his life story, and in doing so, we illustrate a bit. We have other people, and we're using clips, and basically you realize like, man, he's kind of a Forrest Gump, and he's been there during, that he's kind of been there during all these really important moments. Like, he was, he knew, I think he mentioned to Mark Hamill, hey, they're casting for this movie called Star Wars, and he's like, he's just kind of been there in the shadows, during a lot of, he's had some nice little kind of cross section moments. And he's been telling these stories for years, and it's the way I think they're presented in a nice way. Some stories, we kind of heard; other stories we haven't, just based on the fact that this guy's been in the industry. This man's like a journeyman of an actor who really broke big with a hugely iconic role, and he's. I mean, sadly, they don't discuss his voice work. It kind of bums me out, but they covered the gambit, so it's not going to really leave anything unexplored. Like it gets pretty up to date. Like they talk about Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he's a very interesting man, and here the big thing the big reason I'd say to check this out that England's a good storyteller, man. He's a really good storyteller who became an icon essentially. So the man has like a great endpoint for his stories, and he's just I don't know, it's very solid.
All right, cool.
It's a good documentary. I'm saying I think this year is a strong documentary, or at the very least the pop
Definitely, I
culture.
remember last year was like particularly weak on the documentary front.
I thought there were a number of good documentaries this year. At least a handful of like list worthy documentaries. Technically there's always like a bunch of documentaries, but so many that are like actually like things that should get more attention than they do.
Sure.
I think this is kind of one of these. This is like one of those like I don't think we've been getting lax on the pop culture documentaries, especially last year. Looking at that, so I think this year it was an uptake in that. And this is being one of those examples. Okay.
All right. Okay, number 13 for me. It is another really big one. Another movie that kind of like defined the pop culture landscape this year. And Dragon, I think you and I probably have similar takes on it. You want to take a guess?
Not particularly.
It's Oppenheimer.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I respect this movie a hell of a lot, and honestly, I've been meaning to watch it again on streaming, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact on streaming as it would in theaters. And I don't know, man. Again, it's like I definitely like this movie more the second time I saw it. I will say the first time I saw it, I was left pretty cold just because there's a lot going on in this movie. Like this movie is like pretty overwhelming as far as just like the number of characters, the different timelines. And then rewatching it the second time, like I followed it more, but it was still like it's just a very dense movie. But I mean, that being said, it is as far as like a Nolan movie goes, I definitely don't think it's like Nolan's masterpiece like a lot of people do. But I do think that it's probably Nolan's most ambitious movie, if anything. Like for me, I think the three movies that pretty definitively are above this for Nolan are The Dark Knight, not Interstellar, Inception, and Dunkirk. But it still holds up very well, and I think it's just really impressive that a movie like this was able to gross $1 billion, where it is essentially another courtroom drama, courtroom thriller. Really stacked cast for sure, but again, I kind of feel like kind of the issue is that the cast is almost a little bit too stacked, where I just have a little bit of a hard time keeping track of everyone's motivation and narrative and everything. But the editing is I feel like the editing is kind of like both the most interesting element of this movie and one of the things that kind of keeps it at arm's length a little bit for me personally. All right, we got some comments here. Okay. Nolan has an obsession with timelines. Indeed, he does, Jacob. I actually thought Dunkirk was just okay. Jacob, I don't. It's weird because Dunkirk is not a movie that I would usually go for because it is pretty much all wall to wall action and no character. Which Dragon, as you know, that is usually not something that I go for. But it's just the way that Nolan did that movie that is very intriguing to me. Just the intersecting timelines and everything. And honestly, I think he did the intersecting timelines better in Dunkirk than he did here. All right. Yeah, it is thanks to Robert Pattinson for getting Nolan involved in the story of Oppenheimer. All right, it's more the timeline thing that gets me. Yeah, all film is subjective, Jacob. I respect your opinion for sure. I happen to find the timeline thing intriguing. All right, Dragon, what is your number 13?
My number 13 is another documentary. It's Albert Brooks, Defending My Life.
This was really good. This was really good for sure.
Yeah, I love Albert Brooks. This is a nice fireside framing device of him and Rob Reiner sitting around and talking about life, comedy, his life, his comedy, his films. He's got married. Albert Brooks was like a triple threat, man. He directed, he wrote, and he starred in a majority of his
This
movies.
movie was actually pretty informative for me because
Yeah.
I actually did not know that he was that big.
What I didn't know, which really captivated me, is I learned a lot. What I loved the stuff I've seen him in, but really, I I didn't realize he was like the well received version of Andy Kaufman in the comedy world. That's what
Right,
really wowed me.
exactly. Yeah.
I knew like I've seen like his ventriloquist routine, the idea that he basically is the world's worst. I've seen a little bit of that, but I didn't really
Uh-huh.
grasp like that was really his whole thing. He didn't really do traditional stand up. He did that. Like he did like the experimental comedy, but people loved him so much, and he didn't wrestle women or anything, so it went well for him. He was a trailblazer, insanely funny and very endearing. I think the endearingness is like really went far with him. He's
And of course, to a generation of people, he's like one of the ultimate animated fathers.
And it was fascinating is the fact that we only dedicate maybe like 3 minutes at most to finding Nemo. And like a part of me's in the back of my mind is like, oh, when are we gonna get to Nemo? And we do, and it's like towards the very end, and even if it's like 3 minutes, we say all we need to say about it, really. It's like we don't really I feel satisfied even though I wanted more. That's the only thing is like I could have spent like another hour on Albert Brooks because I love the subject so much. But
Uh-huh.
I was satisfied with what we got, but that's like, I don't really have a good reason for not ranking it higher because it's in that weird space where it's an HBO documentary, where it's not like a documentary film, but it's like a really nice, it's very well presented. It's talking about all sorts of movies and stuff that Albert Brooks did. It's also, I want to give it credit here. I think it's great that we did something like this before.
Did it mention the Simpson stuff, Dragon? I forget.
I have to go back. I think it did, but
I
I don't
do
know
think
how
his
much.
Simpson stuff is like obviously outside of Marlin, which is just going to be his most iconic voice work.
They mentioned that he did voice work, and you saw the Hanks. I think you saw the Hank Scorpio, but I don't think it lingered on it. I
Okay,
think they kind
okay.
of showed like here's some of the other stuff.
I mean, you got to remember, man, he wasn't just Hank Scorpio though. He was like a ton of Simpsons characters.
Because remember, like the big connection too is James L. Brooks. So
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so the big thing I want to highlight this thing for is that we didn't wait till after the subject was gone, which is so often what we do here. Like for example, his brother Bob Einstein, who passed away sadly, he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Mhm.
He got a documentary on HBO, which was also really good, and Albert Brooks pops up in that. But it's sad they had to wait until after he was gone. But I appreciate the fact that we actually had Albert Brooks kind of weighing in on his own life, much like my favorite Albert Brooks movie, not counting Nemo, defending your life.
Mhm.
So again, this is just like something in terms of with my list in terms of like rewatchability. This is something I would easily rewatch. I kind of realized I was going through like, man, I just can't wait to watch the Albert Brooks thing again. So I would
I
absolutely.
hear that. I hear that. It was I actually watched it when I was sick and it definitely acted as a comfort watch for me.
And honestly, for me, it was a thing where I was just completely, I was completely like, I had no idea this thing was coming at all. I was just like going through HBO Max. It's like, oh, I guess they had Defending Your Life. And I read it. Wait a minute, that's not Defending Your Life. Is that? Oh my God, it's an Albert Brooks documentary. Christmas came early. So yeah.
Okay. All right, my number 12, Dragon. This is this movie kind of it's Saltburn. I'll just say what it is. Saltburn, number 12. And I feel like this movie is incredibly similar to Promising Young Woman in a lot of ways. Like, it's got a very commanding lead performance. Barry Keoghan this time around, who just, I mean, Keoghan is just incredible in this movie. I mean, he is, I think this might be one of the kind of like the big Keoghan performances. Like, when we look back on his career, this is going to be one of the tall benchmarks, I think. And then, but it's also got both Promising Young Woman and Saltburn, unfortunately, kind of have the thing where the ending can be a little bit frustrating. And I know Peregrine's in the comments here, and he disagrees with me about the ending. He really loves the ending. For me, I kind of feel like this is sort of like a reoccurring problem that came up with me, Dragon, that you're going to see on a number of these movies that otherwise I do really love and I think are just really solid films overall, is the endings. Unfortunately, like, there is this thing where these movies, I can think of at least like two more examples that are coming up on my list, where they will get to a point where the story basically wraps up and then the movie will just kind of keep going. It's like, yeah, and we're going to do this for a little while now. And I'm like, okay, that's good. It's solid stuff, but like structurally it kind of bothers me just a little bit that like basically, Dragon, I feel like the twist that happens like in the third act of this movie, I kind of feel like should have been a little bit like it feels like we cover a lot of territory in the plot in the last like 10 minutes of the movie, and because of that it kind of leaves me feeling like the movie was a little bit rushed. But I do think that the movie actually does a really good job of like it's one of those kind of like summer hangout movies where you are just on this this really memorable location of the Saltburn estate, hanging out with Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi, who once again is fantastic in this movie. He's just as good in this as he was in Elvis, just in a different kind of role. Yeah, I think the second act of this movie, where they're in Saltburn and there's kind of that kind of there's kind of like a really interesting power dynamic going on there. That's the stuff that really drew me in. The third act, like I said, it's not even that I really disagree with the directions the plot goes. I just think that the movie either could have been a little bit longer, or we could have teed up some of the stuff in the third act a little bit earlier. Like, just pacing wise, it's just a little too rushed. And I'm sorry, Peregrine, I personally don't like the last scene. I think it's a little bit... Dragon, you see a lot of Barry Keoghan in the last scene. I'll just say that much. You see too much of Barry Keoghan in the last scene. And for me, it was a little bit like the movie was kind of like, okay, like we've already grossed you out. The bathtub scene, Dragon. The bathtub scene. My God, the bathtub scene. So it's like the movie is like, at a certain point, it kind of just feels like it's just kind of like trying too hard to be gross and disturbing. But I do think that there are a lot of really good elements in here, and it was close to making my top 10. It really was. Jacob, you do not want to know what happens in the bathtub. You do not want to know what happens in the bathtub, Jacob. Trust me. Look it up. Look it up. If you really just Google Saltburn bathtub. I'm sure it'll come up. Anyways, Colby says Saltburn has been creeping up my list all month since I've watched it. I just love a movie where my boy Barry Keoghan gets to play a slimy, weird little creep. So every movie Barry Keoghan has ever been in, essentially. All right. Banshees and Inisherin was also very high. Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's Saltburn is very much like if the ending was just a little bit more fleshed out, I could easily see this in my top 10. So I'm almost kind of frustrated that it's not. All right, number 12, Dragon, for you.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant
Oh, okay.
Mayhem.
Good. I'm glad that you found room for this. I really like this movie a lot. I just, again, for me it was pretty competitive, so some stuff just kind of had to go by the wayside.
I mean, I'm always on the outskirts of the fandom of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, only because I wasn't there from the outset. The things I have seen, I've like the minimal things that I've seen. Like I saw a bit of the 2012 show, the CG one that was on Nickelodeon,
Mhm.
and the Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated thing. And then after that, I looked into the Jim Henson films. So at least the original two, not the third one. So that's the thing. I've kind of like reluctant. I kind of went into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing only because there's a number of iterations of them and all that stuff. But this I felt was like a really good kind of reintroductory point. Not that again, like I've seen those other things, but I thought this was a good sell. Taking the Spiderverse approach. Celebration of the property. I love the fun, kind of group dynamic of the brothers. Um, I only have one issue with this, and I'm not a purist for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I just don't feel like I don't really have enough standing to really weigh a lot like the fandom and like how I like because usually the iterations of Ninja Turtles that I have aren't really like getting into like all the very toyetic villains of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's for me is why I don't really consider myself like an end all be all Turtles fan because I don't know anything about these bad guys, and this movie is pretty much the most Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle bad guys that I've got.
I think the Rogues Gallery for Ninja Turtles is interesting because I think visually, like you said, they're all very toygenic. They all look cool.
Yeah.
I don't really think a lot of them have much of a personality.
And that's the thing. This movie, knowing the little that I do know, I mean, the issue. There's two issues in the third act of this movie that I feel is the only weakness towards this film is that um it goes a bit long with like the uber mutation of Superfly, of just it's like okay he's gonna mutate after we seemingly defeat him and we're gonna have a big kaiju battle again. So, at least we have a character essentially turns into a giant mutant kaiju, and we got to stop him. I like things that come from that, though. I like New York kind of rallying behind the turtles. That's really nice, but just still, it's like getting there. Really, we got to mutate the guy into a giant monster. It's like,
Yeah.
can't the movie be over in a simple way? And also, what I was getting at is that it seems like we redeem the bad guys a little too much. That seems like it feels like this movie is definitely something they want to. From what I hear, they're doing a TV show. Even it feels
They
like
are, yeah.
in doing a TV show and even just like potential franchise, like doing like a proper sequel and everything. It feels like if you're gonna do that, maybe don't redeem all the bad guys because then you're gonna have to create like a whole new slew of them, or I don't know. It's like they went deep cuts with these guys, and it just feels like well, yeah, you did them all so they can just be all palsy and hang around. And, like you have Shredder, sure, but I mean, Shredder, maybe the Krang, it's like two. I don't know. It just feels
To
like
be fair,
maybe not.
those are always like the two big
Yeah.
heavy hitters
So I'm
anyway.
just saying I'm not saying that's a terrible choice at all, but it just feels like I'm just saying you gave them like literally all the Rogues Gallery and you redeemed them all in one movie. I don't know how. That's what I'm saying. I
I
mean,
feel
it's
you.
an impressive choice, but it feels like maybe a short-sighted one on their parts. Anyway, Splinter's great. I did not like the cockroach romance at all. The gross outs, I didn't like the gross out stuff in Mutant Mayhem, like with the cockroach and with the puke girl thing. I wasn't crazy about that. Aside from that, I did rather enjoy the movie, and I thought it was like nice. Like it's nice getting the grass
The
spark.
puke stuff, man, that was really drawn out, like unnecessarily. Like they could have done the exact same gag in like half the amount of time.
But yeah, I mean, I had a really good time with Mutant Mayhem. I saw it in the theaters. In fact, I enjoyed it. It was a treat, and I saw it on free. I saw it on well, not free, on like the $4 movie day thing, like the National Cinemas Day or
Oh,
something like
okay.
that.
It's a good movie
So
to see that.
yeah,
Yeah, also I just want to shout out the soundtrack. I think is like really killer.
yeah.
All right. Okay, my number 11 is going to be actually the most recent movie that I saw. I just saw it yesterday. The Color Purple. And yeah, Dragon, I don't know. I feel like this is a very interesting kind of contrast because obviously we just watched the Spielberg film a couple years ago, and I think this does a really good job of modernizing the story. Because it's a musical, the pacing is a little bit off because we need to take time for the musical numbers. That's always kind of a tricky thing with musicals, is like how much of the plot can you really put in with, when so much of the screen time is taken up by the musical numbers. Let's see, as far as the casting goes, Dragon, it was really, really memorable. Danielle Brooks from Peacemaker, she plays Sophia Dragon, and she is just fantastic. I mean, like, just really, I'm kind of pulling for her for to get a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Like, she was just a fucking scene stealer.
Was Sophia the Oprah Winfrey character?
Yes,
in the original?
yes.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, Fantasia Barrino is Celie, who is really good. She did originate the role on I don't think she originated it, actually. I think she was in the Broadway revival. And it's her first major on-screen role, which I actually thought was really surprising because I thought she did a really solid job. Dragon Coleman Domingo is Mister, and he is both really chilling, and also there is just a great air of humanity to him in some elements. And the whole, like, a big part of the third act is all about, like, him kind of like, and Celie kind of reaching some sort of understanding and I don't want to say redemption for him, but forgiveness. You know what I mean?
Did you do you remember seeing Coleman Domingo in anything else?
Coleman Domingo. Colby, what has Coleman Domingo been in? I know he's I want to say, let me do it really quick. Anyways, I know he's been in stuff that you've seen. I know it. Let's see. Actually, maybe not. Euphoria, Fear the Walking Dead, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Maybe that's it.
That's probably what you've seen.
I've seen Ma Rainey's Black Bottoms, probably.
Yeah, that's probably the most likely thing you've seen him in.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the musical numbers here, I will admit, the songs themselves, I have heard that they cut out quite a few songs from the Broadway show, and it kind of feels that way because I feel like the songs here are good. There's one real big standout with Danielle Brooks. But overall, I didn't really think the songs were all that memorable, to be honest with you. Just as far as melody goes. But the production design is really, really on point. Taraji P. Henson plays Shug Avery.
I do love me some Taraji P. Henson.
She's great. Really great costume work on her with that character. So yeah, just overall, very powerful movie. I don't quite think the ending is as powerful as the Spielberg movie because you know how I feel about that moment at the end of the Spielberg movie with Adam, the whole like, Mama.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get quite that cathartic, Dragon, but it's still very cathartic. It's still a very, very good ending. So yeah, and also importantly, Dragon, very importantly, Celie's kind of sexual chemistry with Shug Avery, unlike the Spielberg movie, is a pivotal part of the plot.
So that's what I'm saying. So they didn't shy away from that.
No, they did not. Not at all.
That's like the one change you would actually want to make with a remake.
Right. And it does kind of shift. I feel like it gives Celie a lot more agency in the story in a good way. So
do they do the whole "you sure is ugly" scene?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if it's like word for word, but it's in there for the most part, from what I remember.
Okay.
Dragon, I think you'd really enjoy it, honestly. Especially as kind of like a compare and contrast to the Spielberg movie. I honestly don't know what's better because I do think the Spielberg movie hits the dramatic points a little harder. I will say that. But I think that this obviously has the more modern production design, the musical numbers, the editing is a lot more modern and flowing, and obviously you got that big important part of the character that just was not present in the Spielberg movie. So I think they're both good in their own right, but ultimately I'd honestly probably lean a little bit towards this one being the superior one if I had to pick between the two. All right. Your number 11, Dragon?
A Disturbance in the Force. How the Star Wars Holiday Special happened.
Okay, 1 second, Dragon. I'm sorry. Just to read some comments here. Colby says, glad the color purple made the list. Wasn't expecting to like it. Came out loving it. Yeah. For sure. Jacob, Haley Bailey is only in the first like 10 minutes or so. She plays the young version of Nettie. So she really doesn't have a lot of screen time, but she is very good in it. I wouldn't say she's as good as she is in Mermaid, but that's just because I really think she just freaking killed it in Mermaid. So, all right. Okay, so I'm sorry, Dragon. Go on.
Anyway, A Disturbance in the Force. How the Star Wars Holiday Special happened. So again, I still think it's just an insanely great sell of a documentary. Like, we all know about the Star Wars Holiday Special, but it does beg the question: how the heck does that thing happen in the first place? Like, how does it fall so far out of control? It's like one of the great mysteries, and I love how we really explore it here from a number of from the great pop cultural figures and discussers of our time, like of course Kevin Smith, Seth Green, and a few of these men who actually know.
Professional discusser.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding, but that is actually kind of a fitting title for him.
He's a discusser of things, He's, anyway, so the pop culture commentators of our day, like a Kevin Smith or Seth Green. Of course, Seth Green brings a really interesting shit because he's talked to the man. George Lucas has recorded things for Robot Chicken, and as we see in the documentary, recorded like a gag about the Star Wars Holiday Special in his own voice. So, and also the great Paul Scheer. So again, there's a number of really great people, showing up. Of course, people that
Paul Scheer is like another one of those kind of like classic talking heads that was in all those retrospectives in the 2000s.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a great kind of like it's a great kind of like examination into this into this kind of mystery of how things came about, and it's very much in good company with something like The People versus George Lucas, which sadly never got that sequel that we were promised. So it's kind of like in a sense kind of like a little spin-off of that, or like kind of like looking back now with the changed landscape that is Star Wars, looking back on it now, where we actually can talk about the holiday special, and the holiday special is now out of George Lucas's control completely. That's the thing. It's so interesting seeing how the landscape Star Wars, has changed, and because of Mando, it's impossible to ignore now. The holiday special did in fact happen.
Yep.
It's like it's in there. We don't get Mando without that holiday special. We need it. So we got a bunch of great interviews. The structure I rewatched it today, man. I like the structure and how it does kind of get into almost like the bit of the anatomy of a failure thing, which I really do like. And we're liking it. Like Patton Oswalt likens it to the prequels, which is a really interesting. Like, the experience was like that for a lot of them, and this was before VHS was like a regular thing. So that's why it was so rare, and that's why it's so bootlegged to death. Like, not everyone like taped it at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was definitely this was a special one for me. When I saw the trailer for this, I was like insanely okay. I'm there. I made sure I bought this thing just to make sure I physically had it, So yeah, it's I'll admit this though. The Blu-ray, the release, it does the special features leave something to be desired. I will say there's like no features at all. It's just the movie, so that's kind of disappointing. But as I'm saying though, it's just the content of the thing itself. It is good. Also, Donny Osmond's in it.
Oh my god!
Just the fact that Donny Osmond's in this.
The Johnny Bravo Christmas special over the holidays.
You did?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's great. I just love everything about Donny Osmond and Johnny Bravo, and on the rewatch, just realizing, oh yeah, Donny Osmond actually is in this, and he's like, oh man, he looks just it's like seeing like the aged version. Every time I see that man, I'm thinking of him in cartoon form before I'm thinking about him in live action. I say, man, he's all grown up now. He's not Julie Andrews at all anymore.
Uh-huh. All right, folks, you guys have been very patient. We have finally got into the top 10, so let's go ahead and just crack it out. Okay, so I have not talked about this movie yet because it is a December movie. Um, it is Poor Things. So, Dragon, this is I feel like this is like the textbook of what I was talking about, where this movie pretty definitively has a pretty complete arc, and then at the end something happens and the movie just kind of keeps going for another 20 minutes or so, and that is very frustrating to me because the rest of the movie is like fucking practically perfect. This is, I don't want to say I liked this quite as much as I liked The Killing of a Sacred Deer, just because I think The Killing of a Sacred Deer, my first exposure to Barry Keoghan, by the way, was just perfectly paced. But I mean, as far as like, I love the production design in this movie for one thing. It's just like, if there's any movie that's going to beat Barbie in the production design category at the Oscars, it is going to be this one. Although it probably should have been Asteroid City as well, but we will get there when we get there. Just the cast here, the three big main standouts. Of course, you have Willem Dafoe as kind of like the sort of Victor Frankenstein kind of stand-in here. He's got that fucked up carved face where his whole character is that his father did really, really horrible abusive experiments to him that he only just kind of like alludes to in dialogue. But the fucked up thing is that he actually has like a lot of respect for his father and probably doesn't even really think about it as abuse, which is a really interesting element of his character. Then you have obviously Emma Stone is a big standout. I think right now she's probably the person to beat for Best Actress. She basically goes from like a toddler to like more intelligent than anyone else in the movie, and it's kind of a startling transformation to go to, because the whole premise is that her brain is put into, like, Willem Dafoe finds her body and it's dead, but she has a living baby inside of her womb. So Willem Dafoe takes the baby's brain and puts it inside of her head, thus the Frankenstein angle and all that. But Dragon, the big standout here, and my God, if anyone is going to beat Ryan Gosling for Best Supporting Actor, this is the only one where I actually would be okay with it. Fucking Mark Ruffalo, Dragon. Mark Ruffalo in this movie is just absolutely on fire. Like, he is just so ridiculously silly, and he just plays such a great, like, you mentioned that 2023 doesn't have a lot of good villains, and I don't know, Dragon, I on some level I kind of see what you're saying there, but I like Mark Ruffalo in this movie is like an iconic, like, comedic villain where he is just utterly incompetent at what he does, but at the same time he is very despicable, but he's also very, very, very silly. And it is just such a great, memorable role, and probably my favorite elements of the whole movie, besides maybe the production design. So yeah, and honestly, it's like he sort of feels like he drops out of the movie in place of the thing that we spend the last kind of 20 minutes on, which is really frustrating. I feel like there should have been like more of a punctuation to the end of his character than there was. Instead, we spend like the last 20 minutes on this other thing, which is interesting, but it kind of kills the momentum a little bit. So yeah, I like, again, this movie still ends up in my top 10, but man, it's the type of movie like I really want to put it in my top 5 just because it's so unique. But you know, I'm a stickler for those endings, and I just don't quite think this one stuck to landing, unfortunately. But still, definitely one of the best of the year. Um, Okay, let's see. LAB says my favorite movies of the year: Five Nights at Freddy's, Spider-Verse, John Wick, Mario, Guardians of the Galaxy, Fast X, and Mission Impossible. Those are definitely some solid movies, LAB. Spider-Verse, John Wick, I've heard good things about. Fast X was actually a lot of fun just because of Jason Momoa. It was a stupid as hell movie, but Jason Momoa was really great in it. Guardians is in my top 10. I can confirm that. So yeah, Mission Impossible is definitely in my top 10. Mission Impossible is really good. The one thing about Mission Impossible is I'm not crazy about how they killed off Rebecca Ferguson. And I don't want to get into a debate about that. It's kind of like the one element of that movie that just didn't land for me. Keeper Colby says this movie made me remember Mark Ruffalo was actually a great movie. Haven't seen him act since Spotlight. Yeah, unfortunately, I think the MCU really has not been utilizing him well. So it was great to see him. It was great to see him kind of come back. Fast X has the best villain of the year. I mean, LAB, like, unironically, you might be right. Like, Jason Momoa's character in Fast X is so fucking ridiculous. But yeah. Also, Colby, we should probably maybe consider adding that character to the villain category of the thing we're doing. Just saying. All right, Dragon, you're number 10.
The Doom That Came to Gotham.
Ooh, okay.
So, of course, you got more Mike Mignola Batman going on here. You know, the Lovecraftian Elseworlds tale. I really, this was the best of the DC original animated films that I saw this year. It's I love the clever reinvention in the world building of this one. It's the idea, again, like we do a lot of the Elseworld stuff when done right. Like when we kind of revisit even the Mignola kind of space here, like we did with Gotham by Gaslight. You know, we're kind of taking everything we know about Batman now and looking back on it, but in a very specific setting. So okay, so we take the three Robins and we kind of, we take a few Robins and we kind of find a way to really place them into the story in a way that makes sense. And like, okay, well, how would you address like working in the Batman villains in this, in essentially the 1920s? How would you do that? And we do. Green Arrow, for example, we kind of find a way to work everyone in there, really in ways that makes sense for the setting. Which I think it's just Elseworlds, working as it should work. At the end of the day, though, of course, the best aspect of the whole thing is like stuff like how we work in Ra's al Ghul into a Lovecraft idea. That to me is like that that's utterly perfect for how you would reinterpret this story. You work in the Book of Al Ghul and the Etrigan the Demon, all these Lovecraftian or like near Lovecraftian ideas in Batman. Just we went full tilt with it. So I mean, at the end of the day, I like it. I still prefer Gotham by Gaslight more. I respect the ambition of this story, and I think it adapts the story rather well. I like the style. I think the animation's great. And of course, a big feather in its cap. Patrick Fabian is Harvey Dent, our boy. He's in it.
Oh yeah.
So, and also the ending's very interesting. That's what I'm saying. This is the thing. It's like not designed like really open ended. Like, hey, come back for more. It's just like, hey, this is a very, it's a one and done story. It's it's a very unique setting. It's very dark, and it's I mean, a year where I kind of had the
It's
Mike
certainly
Mignola.
among the more unique animated Batman movies for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, number 9 for me, we have Anatomy of a Fall. Okay, Dragon, this is again a very recent movie. I think technically it was a November release. I got around to it. I actually had to rent it, which is fine. I'm actually like because I was having a really hard time finding this movie in theaters. It was actually pretty frustrating, so I'm glad that I actually had the opportunity to rent it. This is it's kind of like half English, half French, and it's essentially a courtroom thriller where Sandra Hewler, Sandra, I don't know if I'm saying that name right, but she plays the wife of a man who one day mysteriously falls to his death from the top story of the balcony of his snowy cabin that the couple have taken to renovating. That renovation has kind of been causing a lot of marital issues. And so essentially the big crux of this movie is there's two possible outcomes here. Either she pushed him or he killed himself. And Dragon, the great thing about this movie is the way that it plays with perspective and ambiguity. Because the movie never actually gives you the answer. And that could be frustrating as hell. But I feel like the point of the movie is kind of playing around in the idea where a big thesis statement of the movie is that a trial is not about the truth. It's about being able to disprove the arguments, but it's not about like what is objectively true. There's an argument scene in the middle of this movie that might just be the most riveting scene of any scene all year, where essentially you have this setup early on in the movie. It's actually the first thing that really incriminates Sandra Hüller's character, where the police find an audio recording of the argument that the husband secretly recorded, and the whole time you're kind of like, oh man, this recording must be pretty bad. And when they play the recording in the courtroom, this is like such a masterful direction choice where they actually switch perspectives to seeing the husband and wife like through the actual argument, and then back to the courtroom and just hear the audio. I'm literally getting chills just talking about it. It's done so well. We just hear the audio once the fight turns violent. And so we see everything leading up to the violence, but we don't actually see the violence. And that kind of ambiguity, that kind of playing around with perspective it's all over this movie. Like that's kind of the movie's main gimmick, but that scene right there just like really just encapsulates it. And it's like I thought that cut back to the courtroom was honestly breathtaking. Like it literally made me gasp. So I don't even know if I'm doing a good job explaining like what made that moment so powerful for me. And also importantly, an important factor here in this story is that the one potential witness is the couple's 12-year-old son who happens to be blind. So it's a very much like, like the son is like he's trying to tell his recollection of events, but he keeps changing details. But you don't know if he's changing details because he's trying to protect his mother, or if he's changing details just because he legitimately did get confused about where he actually was, because obviously he couldn't see where he was. Oh, it's an endlessly fascinating movie, Dragon. It really is. It doesn't have the same sort of ending problem as Poor Things. Like I certainly think it wraps up in the right place. I just, for as much momentum and build as this movie has, it has a quieter and more somber ending than I was anticipating, and that kind of threw me off guard a little bit. But yeah, I mean, overall, Dragon, I think you'd really dig this. I really do. If you like a good courtroom thriller, frankly, I think this is going to be among the great courtroom thrillers. Like this is like a Few Good Men level of courtroom thriller right here. High recommendation here. All right. Let me just check the comments. Wait, Patrick Fabian was Two-Face as LAB.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. It's Harvey Dent, and he does become Two-Face in a rather horrifying way.
All right, Dragon, what's your number 9?
John Wick Chapter 4.
All right. I was wondering how far this was going to make it.
Yeah, so, it's an ending. It's an ending to John Wick. The action is still top tier. It is indeed the ending to the story. Admittedly, in hindsight, it might have been more dramatic if it were 3 movies, but we carried over in the 4. They kept people guessing with the third ones. I mean, I guess I can get behind that. It's got wonderful set pieces. The action set piece of the movie, like the standout, is the stairway Not an sorry, when I say stairway, I mean it was just literally stairs, like an outdoor stair that they're walking to a place, and it's like this fight scene. It goes like up this giant stair platform. I forget if they're in Paris or not. I think they are. But yes, just they have to keep going up these stairs, and everyone's just trying to stop John Wick from getting there in time. It's just this amazing, crazy scenes, and he's been beaten down so much in the movie, and he's just trying to get up there. It's amazing. Donnie Yen is kind of the foil to John Wick in this movie. He's not the bad guy, but he's like the rival assassin. You know, you often have like the friend, like a colleague of John Wick's who's kind of poised against him, and that's who Donnie Yen is in this. And he's plays a blind man yet again, a blind fighter, much like he did in Rogue One. Very skilled. I mean, look, the only issues I have with this movie is it's a bit of a it's a long movie. The runtime probably going to trim down, and speaking of nobody earlier, we do have a character who's like I forget if he's mentioned if they call him this in the movie, but like he's credited as Mister Nobody, which I feel is like I know Hutch wasn't like actually called Nobody, but it just feels like
right.
it just
Yeah.
feels a little derivative. Like, come on, guys. Mr. Seriously, that whole character, the whole Mr. Nobody character, he's kind of pointless. He's just there because we need a dog in the movie, so we wanted like basically retread the whole Holly Berry's character had dogs in the last movie, which okay, he needed help from a former associate. She has a thing for dogs. Okay. I wasn't crazy about her in that movie. The fact is, we did a knockoff of the Holly Berry character in this movie. Like, and he's got a dog, and that's his shtick. He sicks the dog on people, and John Wick likes dogs, and they kind of forge a little bit of a reluctant bond by the end. So he's kind of a nothing character we could have cut out completely, as far as I'm concerned. So that the villain's a little tricky again, where we have Bill Skarsgård playing the Marquis, who's essentially the boss of the high table, the Marquis. He's okay. I'm just saying, like he's a very prissy, bureaucratic kind of guy who's like not playing fair. It's like, oh man, that guy's not playing fair at all in the rules. Which with the high table, John Wick trying to squash his beef with the high table in this last go around. So there's a bit of that going on there. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd say Bill Skarsgård's really good in the movie or not because he plays like a really Weasley guy, but he's kind of supposed to be. Point being, it's just John Wick 4 was a good action movie to go out on. I think a lot of people are really appreciating the finality of it, and I think it does. They're going back in time and doing spin-offs and stuff right now with John Wick to varying degrees of success. We'll see how that goes with I believe the ballerina they have coming out. She's going to start Anna de Armas, which when she popped up in No Time to Die, she was wonderful. This is not like that same character, but still, it's like, hey, Anna de Armas in kind of like an action movie could turn out pretty well. Jacob in the comments says, "Have you seen The Continental yet?" I have. It kind of disappointed me. I like the third episode most. It kind of disappointed me in getting there. Mel Gibson is also in that, kids.
Oh, God.
Plays like the worst owner of the Continental ever. And he kills people on the Continental grounds. Like the guy's he's like, he doesn't get the concept of John Wick at all.
No.
I don't say it. It's like the whole thing. Like, why this guy shouldn't own? Like, why can't we just have the Continental have Winston as the boss from the start? That's what I wanted when I got into the series. It's like it's very simple. It's like the bylaw of the show. It's like you have, in this case, the young Ian McShane character just being in. I don't know. It's a whole thing. Anyway, point being, it's a good. It was a very well made action movie. Okay, moving on.
Okay, number 8. This was not a great year for horror movies, Dragon. 2022, excellent year for horror movies. This year, not so much. But the biggest standout by far for me, and probably most other people, was indeed Talk to Me. This movie is very original while still kind of like dealing with a lot of familiar tropes, like it's very much a possession movie in some elements. It's very much a that kind of familiar ground that I have been getting a little sick of, I'll admit, where it's like we're basically going to personify a person's trauma in the form of a horror movie motif. But it's done so well, and the directing on this movie is very, very distinct. It's done by two brothers who are previously YouTubers. Drag, I think I told you about this, where they did a series of Ronald McDonald horror short films. Like that's actually what they were known for.
Huh.
Like basically turning Ronald McDonald into like a slasher villain, essentially.
Well, how did he kill people?
What?
How did he kill people?
I don't know.
Oh.
I haven't looked into it. I'm sorry. But yeah, like there are certain moments of this movie. There's one possession scene about midway through the movie that is like very, very visceral. One of the most disturbing things that I have seen in a horror movie in quite some time. The vibe of the movie just in general is just very oppressive, which if you're not into that sort of thing, it's not going to be your type of movie. But yeah, it's got like a really harsh atmosphere to it, and but it's also got like a very distinctly Australian culture to it, an Australian kind of like teen party culture to it, which is similar but feels fresh when compared to like the the American version of a high school party. Let's see. Also, just importantly, I think this is one of the best endings of the year. It's probably one of the most iconic endings to a horror movie in the last 5 or so years, if not more than that. I think the ending of this movie just straight up like kind of elevates this from like a very, very good movie into like, okay, like this is definitely it's a classic. I think the ending of this movie pretty much gives it kind of like an instant classic sort of status. I will admit that it's the type of movie, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Barbarian, where it's like rewatching it, it's not quite as visceral because, knowing what to expect kind of takes away from the shock of it all in the way that Barbarian did. But whereas Barbarian, like I still like Barbarian a lot, but I really think that on a rewatch that movie kind of loses a lot of teeth. This I still think has a lot of teeth to it, and that ending again, like Barbarian's ending it's memorable, it's good, but this is like an all-timer ending. So yeah. Okay, Colby says he absolutely adored Talk to Me, but he wonders where it placed for me. All right, you're number 8, Dragon.
All right. The Super Mario Brothers movie.
Okay, yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see this make your top 20, let alone top 10, especially because out of the two of us, I am definitely the bigger Mario fan.
Well, that's the thing. I'm usually like on the outskirts of Mario. Man, I played the games, but like purely like on Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So I'm not really not well versed in the whole Nintendo of it all. But I went into this, I mean, relatively blind. I mean, I knew the basic fundamentals, most surface level fundamentals of Mario, and I had a great time with it. I just really at its core, I just want a movie that would get me invested in Mario and Luigi as characters. And I think the movie really delivered on that. I mean, Act One, particularly, like the opening of that movie, it's like I get everything these characters are about. I mean, we looked at it very directly. Okay, if you're
I
gonna make a
still
Mario
think one of the
movie,
best scenes in the movie is the bathroom scene with the dog.
well, that's what I'm getting at. Is that like scene one and like this the opening of this movie, like that plumber commercials, like that's who these guys are. They're just plumbers just trying to have their own business and just get around, and it's not going great. There's these two plumbers from Brooklyn, and there's like a Steve Rogers-esque quality in that for me. I don't know. I just kind of like I just I can really invest in what they're going for, and of course that leads them to kind of go on this journey. And I love how it comes full circle in Act Three, in the climax of Act Three, with the star and everything. I love everything about that structurally. I mean, Mario versus, I have some quibbles, like I think with everyone, like yeah, Cranky Kong, yeah, could have been recast him there. Yeah, it's like
Larry David should have been Cranky Kong, hands
that
down.
that would have been fun. as I'm saying, like for example, like the two issues, the Crank Kong. I watched some of the Donkey Kong show growing up, so I mean, that one's like a bit like, yeah, Cranky Kong should have sounded a little better, but that's not. I like the voice cast on this movie. That was like the one that kind of stood out. But not even factoring that, it's just they really. I'm not crazy about how we wrote out Luigi. It's like, man, we just kept him in a cage for the whole movie. It wasn't even like he
That
was
to me was
on this.
like, as I feel like as a bigger Mario fan, Dragon, where Luigi has a lot of nuance in the later games, like characterization wise, with stuff like Luigi's Mansion and the Mario and Luigi RPGs and stuff like that. So I feel like they kind of like, I don't want to say they did Luigi dirty, but they definitely, he was underwritten in this movie. And because of that, like I do think it was a great experience, and like it's a wonderful, like, as far as being a movie that's basically just wall to wall references, it's about as fun as you can get with something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Luigi thing was, like, for me, kind of the thing that kept this out of the top 20 for me.
But yeah, I mean, I do love Mario having his like rivalry with Bowser over Peach, and the fact he's got really good chemistry with Mario has really good natural chemistry with Peach. That's all nice. At the end of the day, look, I think it all works out. It's just this. I think it's nice to see a big success like this for Illumination. I mean, I have no idea how Migration's doing right now.
It is not doing well, but I've heard it's actually pretty decent.
That's what I'm saying. It feels like maybe probably should have held off like a movie after until Migration, but I don't know. Regardless, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like I had very grounded expectations of this movie. I think it met those expectations, and there's just something really. Again, it's a movie that I haven't really found the time for it yet, but it's on Netflix, and I would like to rewatch it. I mean, I enjoyed this movie, and again, it made me care about Mario. That's all I really wanted.
For sure. Jacob says hopefully Luigi will get explored more. Luigi's Mansion. That's all I'm saying. That's what I want.
They alluded to Luigi's Mansion, like they should just do it.
Right. All right. Colby says, I'm a registered card carrying member of the Illumination Animation Hate Club, but Mario was all right. Jack Black made it worth watching.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we got. Okay, number 7 for me. I feel like I've been talking a lot about this movie recently. We got May, December. So yeah, this is just a very interesting little kind of drama thriller. And Dragon, the really key element of this movie that I think is fascinating, and I think you would be really into, is that it's kind of like an exploration of the dangers of taking method acting too far. So I don't want to go over the plot. It's a very kind of like soap opera sort of disillusion of, oh god, I don't know. There's just a lot of moving parts to this movie that I don't feel like going over again, especially because a lot of it's pretty taboo. But Charles Melton, who was the second Reggie in Riverdale, he is just a huge standout here. One of the big surprise performances of the year. I think he deserves to get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, as he's essentially the husband of Julianne Moore. And the big kind of sick thing about their relationship is that they got together when she was in her 30s and he was like 14. Dragon, as I've said, Corey Michael Smith is a big reason to watch this movie. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the screen time that he does have is incredibly memorable, especially if you're kind of like following the trajectory of his career. He's like a big linchpin of the plot of the movie. He's, like I said, he's not in a lot of it, but he's a big linchpin in it. So yeah, Natalie Portman playing the actress who is kind of like shadowing Julianne Moore's character for a biopic. Just that alone is just a really interesting premise, and how Natalie Portman kind of goes into this house. She sees that Charles Melton is very obviously like like this woman kind of like sank her teeth into him when he was 14. She went to prison for a couple years, but they stayed together. This dude has basically had like no actual adult life outside of this woman. It's very much an Arrested Development kind of situation. And Natalie Portman sees it and sees how messed up she is, and she's trying to reach out to him. There's a lot of push and pull, a lot of really good, juicy melodrama, great performances. Yeah, one of the best of the year for sure, definitely. One of the biggest surprises as well. I was expecting to like this, but I definitely ended out like really loving it. And honestly, as we go forward, I think we're kind of at the point now where everything going forward on this list is going to be like big love, like at least 9 out of 10 movies for me. All right. Jacob, I think Illumination has been getting better. I will say that. And I don't know. I like Despicable Me 3, but almost exclusively because of Trey Parker. Anyways. All right, Dragon, you're number 7.
All right, my number 7 is Nimona.
Nimona, okay.
So yeah, this is Blue Sky and or I guess Blue Sky via Disney, however you want to kind of come down on the production of this one, because essentially it's a Blue Sky film, which then Blue Sky was kind of like Disney had oversaw Blue Sky, and I forget which. Basically, it's like the official story is like Disney, basically shutter Blue Sky, ergo this film can accidentally fell by the wayside, but. It seems like Disney might have had a problem with some of the stuff that was in the mode of fearing, like, hey, we're getting a little progressive here. Maybe we shouldn't,
I don't know. It's a little gay.
That's the thing. So the unofficial thing is that Disney might have been like, we don't want to be the gay animation. Let's not. We already have enough trailer time. We see like Lufo is like maybe giggly for a reason. Like they don't. They're just that's the thing. Like Disney's always on the fence about. Progress, not progress. Progress, not progress.
Exactly.
So
progress as long as it makes us money.
Point being, whoever made the decision, intentional or no, they missed out majorly. Nimona's great movie. A lot of people, I think, anyway, slice it. Had this movie come out, a lot of with either Blue Sky or Disney in connection with it, a lot of people would have really respected them for this movie because it's a very original concept. It's got a really good animation style applied to it. I love the I love the idea. We've taken kind of the usual cop framed for murder trying to exonerate themselves plot, but we put it in kind of this futuristic night setting. But I mean the big sell for the movie for me is that we have Ballister. Riz Ahmed. Is it Riz Ahmed?
Yes.
Yeah, the Riz Ahmed. Ballister character is this guy who's good night. He really worked for it. Kind of the underdog sort. He's labeled a bad guy, and I just love just taking this character. We, the audience, have seen. Okay, this guy's not a bad guy at all. Yet he's a wanted man and everything. And so I don't know. I just really like the idea of giving this bad guy status and giving him
great look for sure.
So he has this bad guy status. And they have this very overeager kind of minion, essentially this overeager kind of like partner in crime, who like wants like an evil mentor because she's being kind of deemed by society as a monster, as a villain, essentially. So she, it's just I love that concept of just like she because of the way everyone's branded him, it's like, hey, this guy's a bad guy. I want to work for him. I'm like, well, no, he's not a bad guy. He's trying to clear his name. You little pink psychopath, come on. Right. And of course, Chloe Grace Moretz, she's a lot of fun as Nimona, this shape-shifting.
One of the best voiceover performances of the year, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of transformative range, let's say, with the shape-shifting. It was very pro-villainy, and we kind of walk it back as we go on. We kind of peel back the layers, see the root cause of it. The only dig I really have against this movie is the villain is kind of telegraphed in a sense, in that, I mean, there is a mystery there of what the heck happened, but you can kind of piece together, like, okay, it probably has something to do with the descendancy of Gorath, or I don't know if Gorath's the point is like the big shining knight, kind of like founder of the whole thing. And the turn that we take with the big scroll and the big backstory thing, it feels like no, she's pawned it off, and look at this scroll here. It's like, look, Namona's there, she's been manipulating things. It feels like, come on, guys. I mean, really, we're gonna fall for the old scroll gag. It still works. Even if the villain's a little telegraphed, and even if we do have the whole, like, we're casting doubts upon Nimona now towards the end to seemingly extend the third act, all of that still works, and it conveys the story in an effective way. It just not as smoothly as I think maybe it could have gone. Only in that third act, though. And that's the thing. It's like, we have a really good friendship between Ballister and Nimona. It's very fun animation. It's a very refreshing watch in a movie in a year where we really need, like, animation to kind of spice things up. Where it's like, it feels like Wish gave us one half of this equation. Wish gave us, like, okay, the animation looks pretty good with the backgrounds and stuff, but, like, nowhere near, like, we're not challenging the medium, we're not pushing things, we're not really throwing new ideas out there. It's like, hey, let's just like, throw a few, like, familiar things in a pot, just shake it and, like, throw it against the wall. That's what Wish was. This is not Wish. This is something special.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are talking about this movie, and I think it's been, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get the best animated feature nomination, which I'm sure people are going to be upset about. We'll see. I mean, I'm hoping
I'm rooting for it to get nominated.
I think it should.
Honestly, I think if Wish gets nominated and this doesn't, man,
that's right. Yeah, that's Disney putting a finger on the scales. If that's what's happening there, if that gets nominated and this does not. But that's the thing. From what I understand, like, the Boy and the Heron's probably going to, like, take a spot that this probably. I'm not saying, like, the Boy and the Heron does not earn that spot. I'm just saying that. From what I understand, it's like, they want to definitely got to get the Boy and the Heron in there. We get Spiderverse in there. I'm trying to remember. I know there was some competition. There's, I don't know. The point being, Mario Brothers is probably going to get a nomination.
I don't know about that because
so I think that's really the big question.
Like, was not great on Mario Brothers, and it's like, I feel like if the Lego Movie couldn't get into that category, I don't think Mario's getting in. Honestly,
we'll see. I don't know. Illumination might have a better standing with that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know. The point being, look, I think Nimona deserves a lot of the praise and a lot of the attention. I would love it to be nominated. I mean, heck, I'd be really impressed if it won. I don't think it will, but at the very least, this thing deserves attention. I think it was the best. Netflix has always been really great for, like, the kind of the unexpected, success in animation.
The machines, yeah.
Yep. So I think this, and also the repurposing of, like, the abandoned ideas and, like, giving them new life. So Netflix has excelled at that, and I think is another case of that.
All right. Well, I'm definitely rooting for it to get nominated, Dragon, but it is not going to win Best Animated Picture because my number 6 is the movie that is going to win Best Animated Picture, which is The Boy and the Heron.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually kind of crazy. Like, Spider-Verse still definitely has a chance. Don't get me wrong. I definitely think Spider-Verse still has a chance. But Dragon Boy and the Heron, man, it's definitely not the most accessible Miyazaki film, for sure. But it is far and away one of his most ambitious and one of his most thought-provoking and meditative movies. And also, it is insanely creative. I mean, Dragon, the world building on display here, like the level of world building, the just all the different mechanics, all the like, essentially it's a world that's kind of like the afterlife, but it's also very much got a bird motif to it. So you see parrots, you see pelicans, you see the obviously the heron. So it's honestly, Dragon, a lot of the afterlife stuff in this movie, it kind of gave me the vibe of, like, this is kind of like the existential, like if Soul were to spend its entire runtime in the afterlife stuff and not have the weird body swap stuff, which I didn't like in Soul, this would probably be more what I was kind of hoping that Soul would be like, because it is very much like an exploration into that sort of thing. It's so many things. It's like impossible to describe the actual plot of this movie, so I'm not even going to try. it's a very dense movie in that regard. But it does have a lot of roots. Like Miyazaki did lose his mother at a very young age to World War II, and this, like, the main character does go through that at the very beginning of the movie, and much of the movie is kind of like about accepting that loss through a very, metaphorical, kind of Spirited Away-esque journey through this surreal world. Dragon, I could not find a Japanese subtitled version, which is how I usually like to watch Miyazaki movies, but I'm glad I saw the English dub, my friend.
See, I can only do the English dub. I don't know why. You know why? Because of Toonami. It's the only I have to have the dub. It's what I grew up with. It's what I'm used to.
It's like the moment where it's like, okay, I really want to watch the subtitled version of these movies when I can. Is Betty White in Ponyo. She just took me out of the Japanese vibe of that movie so hard. But, it's like with Miyazaki, it's like usually the dubs are really good. Like, for example, I definitely prefer the dub of Kiki's Delivery Service to the subtitled version, specifically for Phil Hartman. I love me some Phil Hartman. But this movie, Dragon, Robert Pattinson. Do you know who Robert Pattinson plays in this movie?
Well, I assume he does not play the kid.
No.
Yeah, who does he play?
He plays the Heron.
Right.
And Dragon, I don't know if you've heard the voice clips of the Heron, but it sounds absolutely nothing like Robert Pattinson. Nothing. It is such a wild voiceover role. I mean, it is honestly one of the most wild voiceover roles I have ever seen in the industry, just as far as like, and it's not like Robert Pattinson is like that experienced. Like, he might have done like a couple guest appearances here and there. I don't know. This is definitely his first like major voiceover role, and he just crushes it. I mean, it is crazy. So yeah, this movie, it is honestly, Dragon, I would say it's definitely in my top 5 Ghibli. Like, I actually, this might be a hot take, but I actually think I like this movie a little bit more than Spirited Away, because it's just got a lot. It almost feels like kind of like a spiritual successor to Spirited Away, but just a little bit more mature, a little bit grander as far as the world building. Like, honestly, the only Ghibli movie I'd pretty definitively put above this is like, in as far as like being an epic story with an epic scale, I'd probably put Mononoke above this. And as far as just being like a hyper relatable little piece of comfort food, I would probably put Kiki above this. But yeah, this is cream of the crop Ghibli, man. It really is. And if this is his last movie, then he picked a hell of a movie to go out on. All right, so we have a number of comments here. I'm going to try and go through them. Okay. Oh, Kogias, Robert Pattinson is your least favorite actor. You're breaking my heart, buddy. You're breaking my heart. I love me some Robert Pattinson. I'm sorry. Yeah, Colby, the English dub was phenomenal. Also, I mean, it's not just Pattinson. You got Willem Dafoe. You got, who else is in there? Colby, like, by all means, shout out a few other people in the dub. Okay. I only watched subtitled version of anime. Yeah, for me, anime, I think, is pretty, like, I hear what you're saying about the Toonami thing, Drake. Yeah, Mark Hamill, thank you. He's big. He's got a big role. Florence Pugh is fantastic. Yeah, it's great. LEB, you should binge Ghibli at some point. It's pretty much all on HBO Max. Oh, I'm sorry. Max. It's all on Max. I don't like Spirited Away that much. Yeah, I really respect Spirited Away, but I've never really
Don't let No Face hear you talk that way. He's gonna eat you guys.
I've never loved Spirited Away as much as a lot of other people do. I respect the hell out of it. It's a gorgeous movie. I think the thing with Spirited Away is that it's a very, very, very Japanese movie. And because of that, I feel like there's a little bit of a cultural barrier. But then again, I mean, it's very beloved. So it's like, that might be a cop out. I don't know. Okay, yes, Christian Bale, Gemma Chan, Dave Bautista is in this also. Just yeah, a lot of people. All right. Oh my god, Robert Pattinson's Batman hurt my feelings on a personal level. Wow. Okay, that's hot. You don't have to apologize though, Koki. Like I said, I am always intrigued by your hot takes, my friend. So never apologize for that. All right, Dragon. And honestly, just the only reason, like I said, we're pretty much at 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10s here. We really are. It's pronounced Ghibli. Yeah, sorry, Jacob. But the only reason why this doesn't crack the top 5 is that it's definitely not that accessible. If you watch this as your first Ghibli movie, or I'm sorry, I just did it again. Your first Ghibli.
How does Jacob know?
I think Jacob is probably a better expert than either of us.
I don't know about that.
But it's just not that accessible, right? Like it's very layered, it's very dense, almost to a fault. Honestly, Dragon, I would not be surprised if you watched this and you did not take as much away from it as I did. Just because, like I said, it is very layered. It is very dense. I would not be surprised if it was a little too complicated for you. But I'll definitely be curious to hear your opinion on it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob, or Dragon, number 6, I'm sorry.
Elemental,
okay. Right outside of the top 5. Just missed the top 5. I just want to say for the record, I'm really happy for Pete Song that this did get the second win that it got, because I was really worried for him that first weekend.
Yeah, I'm proud of Pete Song for this one. Look, it's not perfect. I know. Okay, I mean, when you look at Elemental, especially in the rewatch, and it's like, yeah, the Wade, you can kind of tell.
Wade has straight up one of the worst character introductions of any Pixar characters.
So that's the thing. Apparently, behind the scenes, there was a struggle. Wade was a very tricky element of the film for them because the introduction was a hard thing, as you can imagine. It's just the fact that he is kind of... He's almost the weak link of the movie in terms of like getting this character to work. Because originally, apparently, when they were working on the movie, like his mother was going to be the bad guy, and they realized they don't really need a bad guy, so it was like a whole thing. So I can, I can see the struggle on that.
Hello. Dragon, you there? Did he just drop out, folks? Can you guys hear him? Or is it me who dropped out? Let me know in the comments, guys. Seriously, can you not hear Dragon? Dragon's gone. Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't hear Dragon. Okay, I apologize, guys. Let me... I do have something I can tease, though. Dragon, are you there? Okay, he's gone. Okay. Folks, we will get Dragon back on momentarily, hopefully. But I do have something to tease out. Colby and I, along with our good friend Rohit Dar, are going to be hosting our first annual award show for the year, the Golden Tikis. It is a movie award show that mostly retains categories from the Oscars, but also has a few categories that I kind of borrowed from the MTV Movie Awards, like Best Villain, Best Needle Drop, Best Ending. I think those are pretty much the three. And so what we're going to do with this, folks, is that me, Peregrine, and Rohit, we went through and we had, between the three of us, we made a list of nominations. And we then are going to go ahead and every 2 days, starting tomorrow, I'm going to put up a new poll on the community tab. And you guys can vote on the winner. And after, as soon as a new poll, gets added to the community tab, I will delete the old one. So because of that, we'll kind of like lock in the votes where they stand when the new poll gets put up. So you guys will have 2 days for voting on each of the polls. And at the beginning of February, we will go ahead and announce the winners. And also, Peregrine and Rohit will reveal their top 5 of the year. Okay, I don't know what's up with Dragon, so I am going to probably go ahead and press on with my top 5s. I'm sorry, folks. This is super unprofessional right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and send Dragon a quick message on Skype and ask him if I should go on. All right. Ooh, fun. LEB says the Oscars by people who actually watch movies. Yeah, indeed. I think between Rohit, Peregrine, and myself, I think the three of us, Little Blue, that's a very good question that I'm trying to figure out. I'm sorry. I just messaged him on Skype, so hopefully he will get back to me. Oh, there he is. Okay. You there? Hello? Oh no. Yeah, I don't know what the problem is, folks. His looks like his mic kind of cut out out of nowhere, which is very ironic because I was literally the one who was having mic issues before we got going here. So this is like literally the exact scenario that Dragon and I did not want to have happen.
Hello.
But hey, you there?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt your you talking behind my back, but I'm here.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I tried to give you the test. I was like, you there, Dragon? You there? That was like, oh my god, it's the thing that we feared for me, except it's happening to you.
Anyway,
All right, anyways, Dragon, I'm sorry. Go on with your number 6.
Okay, here's a test. Do you remember what the last thing I said was?
Low key, I don't even remember what movie you were on.
Okay. Elemental. I was talking
Elemental.
about Elemental.
Right. Okay, let's see. The last thing you said, basically we were talking about Wade and how he was kind of a problem and the writers did their best with it.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So so Wade obviously is a bit of a struggle because he's a linchpin in getting Ember to go on the journey that she does. By the same token, though, like there are a lot of like plot things away because Wade does provide a lot of solutions for her stuff, and if they get solved too early, the movie ends too early. Also, it doesn't help that the movie is kind of is essentially was sold as a rom-com, and in reality it's like it's an immigrant experience
that's absolutely what the movie should have fucking been sold as, and it frustrates me.
That I blame Disney marketing on. I blame marketing for that one.
Totally.
That's the thing. So this movie, though, the animation and the whole thing we're doing with like the world building with the chemistry components of like how the four elements kind of intermingle and how that kind of works out logically and how we're kind of paralleling it to real life. But also just the fact that we just have you always have like how water interacts with fire and how a relationship like that could sustain itself, and like what does it say about like a future they have, and what we're saying about kind of the intermingling of cultures. Um, I love Bernie in this movie, Ryan Del Carmen, the wonderful Ryan Del Carmen, doing the sorry, wonderful Ryan Del Carmen doing the voice. Another example of a scratch Pixar actor, Pixar.
Long line of tradition, yeah, for sure.
Yep, kind of a Pixar crew member doing a voice, and then the scratch, and they loved it so much that they kept it. He's flawless. I mean, ultimately, this thing is like a love letter to Pete Sohn's parents, and you feel that in the movie. And yet again, Pixar hits me right in the feels, like again. And yeah, it's they just kind of do that. Even like for because of that, I kind of look past the movie's faults because I think it hit it hit all the emotional beats that it really needed to hit. Again, like taking out the fact of like, yeah, we kind of missold the movie, and I mean the relationship's there. I mean it's there as much as it probably needs to be, but we're hitting all the other stuff more importantly with Ember and her arc and her family and everything. You can see that Pete Sohn has put his blood, sweat, and tears into the movie, and I tell you, man, every time I rewatch Elemental, that ending just gets me. It's utterly flawless in every way when they do that bow to each other and like how we set up that bow. And it's a real thing. Pete Sohn's father had to go through that, what Bernie went through. And seeing that happen, ending the movie like that, it's like, oh my god, utterly flawless and just wonderful.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Top 5, baby. Top 5. Okay, my number 5, Dragon. This is a movie I very much don't really think would be on your wavelength. But for me, I think it's like one of the absolute best top tier R-rated comedies that we've gotten in a long time. It's super memorable. It's super quotable. Bottoms. I like Bottoms just came out of nowhere for me. And I just had such a fucking fun time with this movie. I saw it twice in theaters, and both times I was just dying from beginning to end. This movie is just stacked with laughs. Essentially the plot is that it is a female fight club that the main characters in high school are trying. It's basically a mix of Superbad with the whole like trying to get, trying to lose their virginity before college. That's a big part of it. And I guess Booksmart too is technically in that vein. But then also you got the fight club element to it. And I think this movie just has such a great chemistry with the girls that are in the fight club together. And they form such a really strong dynamic with each other. There's a lot of really memorable standout characters here. Um, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just kind of beaming at this movie. I think the world building, oddly enough, which is fucking stupid to say in a movie like this, because it's basically just takes place almost exclusively in a high school with, like we'll occasionally go to the main characters' bedrooms from time to time. But the world building in this movie is so fucking heightened. It just exists in this plane of like everything is just like amped up to a ridiculous level. Like, for example, the fact that the high school football team is literally like deified and put onto a pedestal and just gets like very, very, very blatant like special treatment from the from the school and stuff like that. And like the school's culture basically like revolves around them. I mean, there's like all these little sight gags in the background. Like it really floored me with how much attention to detail just establishing kind of like the heightened almost cartoony quality of this world is. And like I said, the characters are really likable. The villain, Jeff the quarterback, is again, I think he's another, like, I don't know, Dragon, I think you just haven't seen some of these movies that do have legitimately great villains, because Jeff is a great villain. He is just a comedic buffoon to an absurd degree. Actually, now that I think about it, he very much pairs kind of well with Ruffalo and Poor Things. They're both kind of similar, just like they're villains kind of specifically because they are out to get to the main characters, but they're just so incompetent and just stupid, and that's kind of the joke of them, and that's what makes them memorable as characters. Yeah, just all around Bottoms, just one of the best times I have had in a movie theater all year. I will say this, I think Bottoms is probably just, as far as like being a straight up just R-rated comedy, I think it's easily the very best one that we've had in the 2020 so far. Just straight up, not even a question. I think it's an instant classic. I think it's probably going to be the next Mean Girls, as far as just being a movie that just gets watched and rewatched and rewatched and rewatched by a new generation. Yeah, I love it to death. I really do. All right. Kogia says, I remember when this film was Tiki's #1 favorite film of the year. Seems like 4 films came around to Kogia. Not necessarily Kogias. It's more like, as the year goes on, I kind of shift things around in my head. So there's definitely 1 or 2 movies that came out before Bottoms that do end up above it on the list. So, yeah, the funny thing about that Mean Girls musical is that it is going to come out, but Bottoms is going to have far more of a cultural impact. Okay, without spoiling too much, Ruby Gillman's villain is one of the most memorable villains of the year. I can believe it. Colby said, I didn't love Bottoms. I liked it enough. But I was shocked by how funny Marshawn Lynch was. Yeah, he was great. He was an obvious standout for sure. Oh, man. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, Colby, I can see how it's like, if you're just not into that sort of thing, I could see it. But for me personally, I can't stop thinking about how much fun I had in this movie. And I'm sure that I have a couple friends that I'm just dying to watch this movie with. It is very much like one of the movies this year where it's like, okay, I need to show this to a few people that I think would absolutely love it. Okay, Colby said, I relate to that, Tiki. I've redone my letterbox list like 12 times. Yeah, dude, it was hard for me to solidify this list, honestly. It really was. All right, Dragon, you're number 5.
Still a Michael J. Fox movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the best documentary of the year for me. We all love Michael J. Fox, and this really gives an insight into his life now. I think the big sell. I kept telling you about this one. I really think you should look into it. It has a very visually dynamic runner where there's this element where basically, the thing where we've seen like people do like the recreations in not biopic stuff, but like in documentaries sometimes, where you have like an
Sure.
actor like filming. So we've seen that done a number of times, and rarely does it ever work. This is like the one time it works the best you've ever seen it. Okay, this is you have like Michael J. Fox like telling you his life story, and it's just the editing between like the recreations and the actual footage and him telling the story is just it's seamless. Like there are no strings attached. Like it's like it's cutting so flawlessly between the actual footage of Michael J. Fox and like him behind the scenes with like an actor obscuring the face and everything. It's amazing. And it's basically it's like I alluded to you way back when I told you about this the first time, is that the moment in which he discovers the shadows of Parkinson's is a hauntingly just natural. It's like every existential dread you've ever had in one moment. Just that realization, that very subtle realization that something is wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
And something's wrong, but it seems just like it's very infinitesimal. It just seems like, okay, well, it's a little weird, but not really, But it's that little eating away at you, just that little nod of like, oh man, there's I should look into this, like all the paranoia that comes from that, and then just like it's just this growing dread of discovery, and so you have that going on, just like in him laying out kind of like the story, but it's really just we see Michael J. Fox, through the course of this documentary, coming to grips, and I guess we, the viewer, too, is like knowing. I remember, we all remember, like, okay, we learn at some point in your life, you learn Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's, and you wonder what is Parkinson's, how does that work? And he might have been your first example of what the condition is. I don't know. At least for me, he was. And the word was, like, way back when he was given the diagnosis, and we kind of covered this in movies, like, like 30 or plus years from now, you're going to really be in bad shape. And Tiki, we're there now. Like, he's in really bad shape these days, and he's making the best of it. And it's just like, that's the story of the documentary. It's a guy coming to grips with, I'm at that point in my life now where I'm really struggling. We keep recontextualizing what still means to this man, in which he's a guy who can't stand still. He's still here. He's still doing things. I was just very impressed by this documentary, and I still am. And nothing really. I mean, a disturbance in the force was like the only other thing that could come close to this. But this is like a thing I think everyone. I think the critics have taken those, and I think a lot of people have, like, everyone who's seen this, I think, has really liked it. I'm one of them. So
I would hope that it would be up for best documentary, but
yeah,
you never know with that category.
I know this
you
one.
Know how that category goes.
I mean, this one legitimately really should be. Okay?
Oh, I know.
I mean, look, if the Oscars were fair, we'd probably have this and Disturbance in the Force.
Won't You Be My Neighbor did not get nominated for best documentary the year it came out.
That's what I'm saying. Let's just say this one actually is like the best run at, like, okay, a best documentary thing. Because this thing has everything in it, man. I was, again, very impressed by it. It's got a little. I still recommend you check this one out.
I definitely need to. I just need to be in the right headspace for it.
Well, it's not even a headspace thing. It's more just like the whole Apple. It was an Apple documentary, so yeah.
Oh, that too. That is an issue.
Yeah.
All right. Number 4 for me. Man, again, I just want to emphasize any of these 4 movies could have been my number 1. They really could have. I think Bottoms is kind of at a spot where, because a lot of that movie was improvised and it's not quite as heightened, but any of these 4 could be number 1 for me. So I don't even really know. I don't even really have justification for this not being higher, but it's just kind of like personal taste at this point. So my number 4 is Godzilla -1.
Really?
And honestly, probably the only reason why it's number 4 and not higher is, again, like the personal taste thing. Like, I'm usually not that much of an action movie guy. So essentially, Dragon, what I think this movie is for me personally is, I think I view this movie in the way that a lot of people viewed Top Gun Maverick back last year, where I really did not vibe with. I think Top Gun Maverick's okay. I think it's good. I think it's got its moments. Like, obviously the Val Kilmer scene was great. But just I just did not really love that movie on the same level that a lot of other people did. And so with Godzilla -1, I definitely think there's a lot of great stuff going for this movie, for sure. And like I said, it is, honestly, Dragon, it's kind of more just the rewatch factor, if anything else, honestly. Because as great as this movie is, and it is great, it is probably the best Godzilla movie ever made. It's single-handedly kind of fucking curb stomped Hollywood's tendency to just overinflate their budgets to ridiculous levels. So things made for $15 million and it looks incredible. The character work, I mean, Dragon, I honestly think this movie is going to make me I'm never going to be able to go back and watch a legendary Godzilla movie again, just straight up, because the character work in this movie is just so far above and beyond anything in the legendary monsterverse. I mean, I've defended the characters in Kong Skull Island because they actually feel like real movie characters and not just cardboard cutouts. But these characters, the kind of post World War II timeline, the paranoia of the atomic age, the survivors guild. I mean, it's this is a legitimately really thought-provoking and in some level tragic kind of movie where it's you are holding on for hope for these characters and you desperately want to see these characters live. And that's such a refreshing difference where usually the human characters in these Godzilla movies are just cannon fodder. But no, I mean, in this movie, the human characters are the heart and soul of it. I think Godzilla actually only appears like 4 times in the whole film. Like there's only 4 set pieces with him, but all 4 of them are unique, are memorable. There's one sequence in particular, it's the second time he shows up. It's probably my favorite scene in the film. It's a very, very Jaws like scene. There's some absolutely wonderful visuals of his scales coming out of the water like the Jaws fin. Yeah, there's just a lot to love about this movie, and honestly, if I were to rewatch it, I might put it above the other 3. It's just that good. But as it stands now, I've rewatched the other 3 multiple times each, and I've only seen this one the one time. And as much as I do really like this, I do think the other 3 are just by their nature compulsively more watchable, rewatchable, I should say, than this. So I think number 4 is fair for this, but no, Dragon. I mean, it is like, as far as a kaiju movie, as far as a Godzilla movie, it's as close to a masterpiece as you're gonna get. It really is. And like I said, it just like it really should teach Hollywood a big lesson there. Um, Jacob says Godzilla is probably my favorite movie of the year. Colby says I never expected to cry at a Godzilla movie. Indeed, indeed. Jacob, I totally respect your opinion of this being your favorite movie of the year. I totally respect that. Honestly, walking out of the theater, I was pretty much like, this is my number 1. Like I said, it really just comes down to the rewatch factor. I can definitely see myself rewatching it, but I can't see myself rewatching it over and over again like the other 3 movies on my list. So that's kind of what it comes down to.
Jacob also asked, like, wasn't Still more of a biopic than a documentary? No, it's a documentary. I'm just saying, like, the device is like a thing we see in documentaries sometimes where they have like a kind of like a stand-in or like an actor like kind of recreate the past events, but like it's not. We're not even seeing the front of the guy; it's just like from behind. So no, it's absolutely a documentary.
Jacob, if this somehow does get nominated for Best Picture, and honestly, Jacob, I do think there's enough critical groundswell to say that there is like a more than 0%. I don't think there's a big chance of it happening, but I'm saying there's a chance. And if it actually happened, it would be one of the coolest Best Picture nominations in the history of the Academy Awards. I will say that much.
Jacob went on to clarify. I was referring to Neighbor. Like, no, Jacob.
Oh no, you're thinking of. He's probably thinking of A Beautiful Day in the
Yeah, no,
Neighborhood.
that one was the biopic. Won't You Be My Neighbor is the documentary.
Is the documentary? Yeah.
Doesn't help that they're both song lyrics.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, next up, your number 4, Dragon.
Oppenheimer.
Ah, okay. I was actually kind of wondering if this was going to get snubbed from your list, low key.
Yeah, so yeah, man, so this is the number 3. Oppenheimer is going to be number 3 and number 4, so it's a bit of a toss up. I mean, look, I don't want to dwell too much on it. I already like blathered on a bit before, but you know, it's this is a personal one for me. My grandfather's last dream was to see this film, so it did hold some. It held a lot of significance for me. So Nolan did an excellent job with it, and you know, I'm eager to rewatch it. You know, I think Nolan visualizes the existential and the ethical dread of Robert Oppenheimer um, flawlessly. You know, this Cillian Murphy, he's you know, him and Downey Jr. They turn some excellent performances. There's a lot of Oscar buzz for Downey Jr. I don't know if it's mainly because like everyone wanted him to get it for other movies, and you know, he does a good performance here. I'm just saying, like, I think he did a better job in Chaplin, but that's just me. Yeah, so this is the big thing of this movie is like the aftermath of the bomb in Oppenheimer's head. Just is utterly haunting the way like Nolan visualizes that, and the fact there's like little to no CG in this movie, in which when we see these things visualized, it you know, it looks amazing. It's got the old film vibe that Nolan's all about. However, you know, the only like things with this movie are that it's really two things. It's one, you can see Nolan, as always, he really struggles with women and relationships. I think this is maybe his best attempt at it with Oppenheimer's wife, but even so, it's like, okay, we kind of wrote her off as like as a drunk until we get further in the movie, until like, okay, we see she really does have his back and everything.
I
And I'm
still
like,
think
what?
Florence Pugh's role was kind of thankless.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like we're kind of no one really uses the women as plot devices, and like they're parts of the story, but they really don't. They're
I
not
think
characters.
Inception was like the one exception to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's every time. Otherwise, the women are very much plot points. And even then, even with Inception, like half of the two female characters in that movie, like the one is like, okay, Maul is very. She's literally essentially a projection of meaning a whole bunch of things
Yeah, but
because
she's
she's really.
also one of the most compelling, like, non-Batman villains of Nolan's
I
filmography.
agree. I no, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, I like her. I'm just saying, like, when you really look at it from like an exploded view, like, yeah, she's still just kind of like, she's a literal walking part of the plot, technically. She's good, and I
But
like
I
her.
mean,
And I
to be
like,
fair, Ariadne is basically just there to be the audience surrogate and not much else.
yeah. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. No one's got a weird hang up with ladies in this movie. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, Rachel Dawes was not a great character in any of
Yeah,
the movies she was in.
that's what I'm saying. It's not like it doesn't feel like he aggressively like doesn't like women or anything. It just feels like it's like okay, ever like imagine like the ladies on the Nolan set just showing up. It's like okay, what are my sides? Christopher is like, oh, here you go. It's just like, well, where's all? I did all this preparation character work. Like you're gonna do fine. All right, just trust the script, read the lines. Just respond, and you'll do fine.
Togiasa's Catwoman in Rise was pretty solid.
Oh, okay, admittedly, yeah, I think I really like Anne Hathaway's Catwoman in that movie, so I would say she's yeah, it's maybe okay, I guess that's an exception. Okay, the point overall, though, you can kind of see he struggles with. You can see he struggles with the female characters in the whole movie. Anyway, so the main thing I have, the main
There were
criticism I have,
no females in Dunkirk Dragon.
and it shows.
I mean, Jacob, to be fair, Dunkirk, it's like, if there were any females in Dunkirk, it would have straight up been historically inaccurate. So
I think the only one they have is like the lady giving out like the toast with the jam on it.
I think that's right. Yeah.
That's about it. Anyway, yeah. So let's see. Okay, so the only other real legit criticism I have is that of all the with the framing device, we kind of jump around a bit to like all these hearings that are going on, and one of the meetings with the scientists at like around like the dinner table. That one we really didn't need, or at the very least, that was the one clunky one. It feels like if we got rid of that, things might have we streamlined that somehow.
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
the movie would have. I don't mind the length. I just wish if we could. That's the one time. It's like I think everything else is tracking pretty well, and like everything like, pays off in the connective tissue. The whole Salieri grudge that the Danny Jr.'s character has. It just feels like that's like the one time where it's like okay, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I know how that factors into that other reveal, but it feels like we only need it for that one point, which I think we can get from other places. It just feels like, it's like they're all sitting around a table.
Mhm.
I don't know. So, yeah, there's a bit of that, but that's the thing. This movie, it just feels like that was like the one more Nolan got a little overly ambitious, but on the whole, this movie again is very much it's a wonderful character study and just is seeing what like the ambition of one man is leading to this devastating kind of like reality of like the finger hovering over the button for all time, like he's in the whole Prometheus fire thing, which is where we get is like the original book that inspired this interpretation of the story came from American Prometheus, all that's like that's just that being like the first visual of the movie, like all that worked really well. I don't know where it stacks up in all the Nolan things. I think this is an important one for him. I think it's great, and yeah, it was. It's a great telling of how we get the bomb, without really being all about the bomb.
All right. LEB, I'm legitimately not sure if you're being serious here with the I think in an interview Nolan said he loved Roderick Rules the movie. LEB, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of those weird videos of like the presidents play Fortnite. Just the idea of Nolan being invested in entirety of the Wimpy Kid movie. I don't know. There's just something very amusing about that.
Well, here's something. So in real life, Bill Clinton loves Grey's Anatomy. So what if,
Oh my God, well,
what if
that I
when he
can
was in
believe.
office? So what if when he was in office, he was just like having like these little watch parties for like Grey's Anatomy?
Well, Grey's Anatomy was not around when he was in office, but
Actually, I'm sorry, you're right about that. But the point being, though, it just feels like like Clinton just like hanging out with people. So it's like, hey, you want to watch Grey's Anatomy? It's like, like you gotta imagine like presidents are kind of friendly with each other. At least the whole they still when a president's out, I still call him Mr. President. That whole thing, at least
uh-huh.
some. But yeah,
All right, LEB, I'm totally kidding. Again, I just the idea of Nolan, like Christopher Nolan, just being heavily invested in like the cinematic lore of Diary of a Wimpy Kid is just a funny idea to me. I don't mean to diminish your comment.
okay. Do you think? Okay, here's a crossover movie for you. Christopher Nolan hanging out with George Lucas. You think they get along?
No, I really don't, honestly.
Because it would be the most awkward exchange ever. Where George Lucas he is like, it's like,
I don't have sex, Christopher. I use computers.
just imagine if they had like there's a movie, Matt, just like George Lucas and Chris Nolan have to spend the day together. And that's
Oh
your
my God.
3 act structure. It's just these two guys who have nothing in common. They're forced to spend the day with each other, and it's just those all. This is the most awkward director camera. Like, there's like a press con, like not press, like a panel or of some
Uh,
kind, or like they have to do like a sit down interview in front of a bunch of people, and it's like, so how do you feel? What are the similarities in your styles? Well, nothing really at all. Just Christopher Nolan, very different mediums. I mean, I'm always tinkering with the movies.
oh my God, I
Well,
love
because
that.
well, I don't like Warner Bros. Well, it's funny. I'm not crazy about Disney, so maybe we can hang out. It's their big bonding moment. They don't like. They've turned against their
Oh,
original
I could see that.
studios.
They turned against the studios that made them.
Well, I always had trouble with Fox, and then Disney bought Fox, and then that's kind of where Lucasfilm kind of eventually falls the way. Just, can't go up against the Empire. Ho ho ho. So.
All right.
Have you ever had tea, George?
Oh my God. I still maintain to this day that I saw George Lucas pull out of an Applebee's parking lot in Petaluma once.
Wait, really?
I'm sure it was him.
Oh, it was not. It was
I'm
not.
sure it was Dragon. That man has a very distinct face and neck beard. All
Did you?
right.
Well, wait, what?
He's got the neck. He's got the very distinct neck.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, did you see the neck bulge?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Did you see like the pompadour hair? Did you see like?
Yes, Dragon. That's what I'm. It was fucking him. I'm fucking sure of it.
Okay.
All right. Anyways,
Anyway, we're getting sidetracked here.
we are. Jacob just wanted to point out, Dragon, that there were only 3 movies that interlapped on our list, which I think is actually kind of crazy.
Overlapped,
right. All right. Keeper Colby says Lucas is a cryptid. He just shows up in places. Indeed.
Oh, there's something for you. George Lucas and Bill Murray.
Oh my God. Well, I think those two will get along famously.
Yeah. And of course, they do just Bill Murray doing karaoke. Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars.
All right. Okay, Dragon, did you say your number 4? Is it time for my number 3? I think so, right?
You don't remember?
Yeah, it's my number 3.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, number 3 for me. This for me was hands down the movie that like grew on me, and the more that I thought about it, I saw it a second time, and the more that I thought about it, it just kept going up on my list, and then just kept sticking around. It's The Holdovers, man. I still don't love it quite as much as Sideways, but that's probably just because, it's kind of like an East Coast versus West Coast thing.
Because there's no Merlot in the movie.
No dragon, but there is Jim Beam. And I do fucking love that Paul Giamatti, he has a drink of choice in each of the two movies. In Sideways, it is Pinot. It is very much not Merlot, Dragon. He is not drinking any fucking Merlot. And in this movie, it's Jim Beam. And Dragon, I am just so tickled. I don't think anyone is bringing up the fact that Jim Beam is essentially like the Pinot of his character in this movie. But no, I don't know, man. This is just like, it is like instant Christmas classic. Like, it is just an instant addition to the Christmas canon. Honestly, man, it might be one of the best Christmas movies. Like, just as far as it's a film about Christmas that is very, very well made, very well acted. Like, when I say the term Christmas movie, you probably think of something that's like very like in your face with the Christmas stuff. And this movie is not, but it is very much overflowing with the good vibes, the goodwill, the wintry atmosphere of Christmas time. I don't know, man. There's a possibility you're going to see this movie and just not really like it as much as I do. But I wouldn't be surprised if once you see this movie, you, especially for the Christmas factor, I mean, yeah, the three lead performances also are just like top tier. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this other than the fact that like I think this is just like a warm hug of a movie, and I think it's going to age incredibly well. I think it's, like I said, it's already like a classic. It feels like, and I feel like it's going to be like a staple. Like, it's going to be like a new movie that people watch every year around Christmas time. And yeah, because of that kind of like big rewatch factor, I gotta rank it in my top 3, man. It's up there for sure. And I'm not gonna lie, the movie is so likable. I still kind of maintain, like, on a much smaller scale than Poor Things, I do think the movie drags out maybe about 10 minutes longer than it needs to. I do think that I'm not as crazy about the ending as some people are, but that's such a minor nitpick, and there's so much to love about this movie. The characters are just so memorable. The performances, it's definitely going to be a contender at the Oscars for sure. Yeah, man, I don't know. I really truly feel like this is like one of the ultimate like comfort watch movies to come out in a long time. It really is. It's just a warm hug of a movie, and it's just very, very, very just nice. The best word I can describe it is just nice. It's just, you want to talk about pleasantries, Dragon? This is a movie all about the damn pleasantries. All right. Colby says, I reserve my comments on the holdovers, but expect to hear about it at the award show. Indeed. Do you think that the holdovers and Fred Claus will become a popular Christmas double feature? I honestly didn't even consider that, but that is kind of a good poll. I could kind of see that happening. I think the holdovers would be the one that you see first because it's got like more gravity to it, and then Fred Claus is kind of like the dessert. All right, Dragon, you're number 3.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Okay, I struggled with this one, man. I really did. I'm glad you put it on your list. For me, it very much falls into the camp of like, I respect it more than I actively like it, and honestly, I can't see myself sitting through it again, But anyways, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, look, it's a long one, but it's it's Scorsese, man. It's what he does, and I think he did a really good job. He again, essentially Scorsese doing a western, with DiCaprio and De Niro, and it's basically about this whole, basically this very conspiratorial, kind of murder, or at least kind of like practically like a calculated genocide of Native American people in this town for land wealth. In other words, I'm sure Jake's gonna appreciate this reference. Um, people like the DiCaprio are using the Native Americans, using them for land development.
I don't even watch Phineas and Ferb, but I get that reference.
Well, no, I mean it's from SpongeBob, Tiki.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Remember,
sorry.
it's
I
like,
know. I knew I heard that quote from somewhere. My
yeah, it's
bad.
like the whole like plankton,
Right.
teaching
Yeah, I know
SpongeBob
exactly what you're talking about
manipulate
now. Yeah.
SpongeBob. You used me for land
Oh
development.
my god.
That's essentially what happens here. We're using, we're charming the Native American people out of their fortunes and basically killing them off for like inheritance, which is a really sick and twisted thing. I mean, apparently there's a lot of like kind of the it's a little bit of the Black Wall. It's kind of it's a Native American equivalent to Black Wall Street, which we kind of saw in Watchmen. So it's basically this apparently.
Sure.
Scorsese came across this story he was kind of fascinated by, and he always wanted to kind of tell it, and he was finally able to here. And it's insanely dark. It's insanely dark and Shakespearean story that are based on true events, which Scorsese's done often. Quite frankly, excels at. And that's the thing. This film is it's Scorsese to a T. It's nice to see him working in a Western setting without doing all the West. He kind of found a way to do that without doing all the Western tropes that we're all familiar with. I have nothing against those Western tropes, but I really appreciate that he brought something kind of fresh and new to it, which you'd expect nothing less from that guy. Of course, you got great actors all around. Plemons is in it. Here's the thing. The only issue I have with this movie is, and it's not even a problem, it's just something to note, is it gets a little artsy at the very end, with like the very, very end.
Oh, you're not crazy about that ending?
In terms of what happens, I love everything that happens in the movie from a dramatic point of view. But it's in terms of how we do
the end note that
like the wrap up, like doing like the wrap up, and essentially
it's another thing where it's like I respect the boldness of it more than I actually actively liked it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So it's telling it's telling a really good story at the cost. Basically, like we're it's basically Scorsese telling a story that kind of got lost in the pages of history. So shining a light on. I really like that he did that. Lily Gladstone's been getting a lot of attention, rightfully so, because she was an MVP for this film. She's probably going to get. Honestly, I think she's going to get the Oscar. I mean, I don't know who her competition is, but she's definitely nominated.
Do you know about the whole thing where she's campaigning in Best Actress instead of Best Supporting Actress?
Well, I mean, what do you think? You think there's an argument for her there?
No, honestly, I think that's going to shoot her in the foot. I think she would have had a much better chance in supporting.
That's what I'm saying. Like, can she campaign for both or just one?
I'm not sure. I know she's going for actress hard. I think maybe I don't know, Dragon. I honestly think that the Academy's locked into if they're going to nominate her, it's going to be for actress. I could be wrong about that.
Well, yeah. In your estimate, who do you think is DiCaprio the main character of that film, or is she the main character of that film?
DiCaprio.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's what I was. Okay.
I mean, she's great, but she's literally bedridden for big chunks of the movie. That's
the problem. I think you're right a bit. But I don't know is there any way to undo like the thing if she could get supporting, or you think?
Dragon, I'm honestly not sure about the logistics. Colby, if you're still in the comments, do you know anything about that? If she could still get if the Academy wants to vote for her in supporting basically against her wishes, I'm honestly not sure.
Anyway, of course, also, De Niro was excellent.
De Niro was, I think, by far the best element of the movie.
I'm saying, with the whole villain thing this year, he was definitely an exception to the whole, we're kind of weak sauce. He was perfect in this film.
Again, I don't sign off on that assessment of villains this year, but yeah, I hear you. He was among the best ones.
Yeah. Anyway, and also I should get in there. My grandfather, he adored Scorsese, so that was another thing that was kind of going through my head seeing the movie, and he definitely he would have loved this. I mean, that's the thing. I was hoping I was going to spring this one on him when it came to streaming, but again, because I knew, unfortunately, when I saw Kills the Flower Moon advertised, I thought it would be a thing where it'd be like in the theater for maybe like early in the same month, early on, or
It
maybe
was
like a
in
month.
theaters for quite a while, yeah.
What's I'm saying, but you know what I mean? Like I thought they'd do like the thing they did with The Irishman. It's in theaters for like a few weeks early, and then it'll go to streaming, and that did not happen. And either way, it would have. Well, it was too late either way. So, point being, dude, this was it was a solid Scorsese film that did bring back some nostalgic memories as well as a compelling story. So, yay!
All right, Colby says he doesn't think there are any rules against it, but he highly doubts it will happen. Right. Okay, number 2 for me, and I apologize that my voice is suddenly gonna get lower. I just can hear other people in my house going to bed. Number 2 for me, Dragon. You're probably gonna be surprised by this. It's Asteroid City. I know it's not my number 1. Look, I talked about this movie to death when it came out. I still adore it. It's still probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie. Um, I love the ensemble cast in this movie. While I think one of the complaints that you can lodge at this movie is that there's not a lot of fully fledged out character arcs. Like Schwartzman is the main character, but even he doesn't have like I don't know. I think the element of this movie that I really respect though is the fact that like you've got that kind of like the play with it, like it's the framing device. Like I really think that he perfected what he was doing in Grand Budapest with the multi-layered storytelling here with the documentary angle and the whole thing of like the film taking place as the stage play, but like a very cinematic kind of visualization of what the stage play would be, and then the black and white documentary stuff. It's all very engaging to me. There's a lot of layers to it that I just love. I feel like it's a very rewarding movie on a rewatch. Much like a lot of Wes Anderson movies, I do think emotionally it is a little bit at arm's length, which Dragon, I don't know if by process of elimination, you know what my number 1 is by now or not. I don't know if you figured it out, but um, if you know anything about how I reacted to what my number 1 is, you know that the emotional stuff in my number 1 is basically what put it over the edge into being my number 1. And honestly, I'm not sure. It might be number 1 for you too. And if it is, I think that might be the first time that we have the same number 1. I'm not sure. We'll see. But yeah, for me, it's still a very special movie. Production design is out of this world, and no one is even talking about this movie for production design Oscars, which I think is a shame. It's kind of like how no one was even talking about The Lighthouse for best cinematography, even though I clearly thought that had some of the best cinematography of the year. I'm sorry, no, it did get nominated for cinematography. No one was talking about it for sound, though, and the sound in The Lighthouse blew me away. Anyways, so yeah, Asteroid City, like I said, I do think the ending is a little bit abrupt, although that's kind of the point. So there's little bits and pieces of the movie I can kind of nitpick for sure if I really want to. But I do think that with the framing device, it is infinitely rewatchable. It like there's a lot of layers added to the movie every time I watch it because of the framing device. And yeah, I think it's kind of fascinating that Wes Anderson, this deep into his filmography, can come out with something like this that I think just blows a lot of his other stuff away, just as far as like style and substance. I feel like basically this movie is like it's style meeting substance. It's not style over substance, it's style colliding with substance. And I love it for that reason. All right, Dragon, what is your number 2?
Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse.
We got the same number 1. All right.
Yeah. So honestly, this one was kind of in a tie with the number 1 pick. I kind of went back and forth at the end of the day. I kind of went with my gut. Look, Spider-Verse is a great sequel. The Spot, of course, just a great, fantastic choice for the bad guy. I love the gag, the bagel gag that connects them to the first film. Um, just Again, there's a lot of empowering kind of moments in this film, particularly like Miles going up against 2099 and the whole like basically 29 like yelling at him and basically like saying you're a mistake, you shouldn't be here. And again, we're gonna really see how things that pay off at 2099 in this other movie, which again is kind of one of the hesitations that does put it at number two for me. Is that we have some unresolved things, and even if we are getting the third movie, it's still like there are a lot of holes in the logic of 2099, of Spider-Man 20, of Miguel O'Hara, and we got to get some clarification on that because this movie does have Back to the Future 2 and kind of an Empire Strikes Back vibe, which I really do appreciate, and I kind of like that. And in the theater, I was kind of liking like having that experience with it. Like by the end, where it's very much like we're reading the letter rapidly in the rain, so to speak, you know. But we go big with the Spider-Verse movie. It just the big issue I have with the Miguel O'Hara thing is that when I rewatch this movie, the canon events thing just really there's just some holes there, and it just then reminds me of like everything was really nice and simple with Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse is okay if you're not in your universe of origin, you're going to glitch out. That's really the only parameters that we had with the Spider-Verse. Pretty simple. We kept it vague as I think we should when we do a multiverse thing. And now all these other multiverse things that we're getting, while Spider-Verse still is king amongst them, I feel with the multiverse, we're not we're adding rules and like we're limiting the scope of the multiverse, which like the canon events in concept is a really cool idea. The idea like these six things always happen to all these Spider-Mans, and that's fine and dandy, and I'm all down for that and the whole Fabulous Spider-Verse, that's fine. But here's the problem I have. It's the fact that when a canon event, at least what seems right now, the way Miguel O'Hara is like laying it out, which may be a lie, maybe like something he's just misconstruing, which we got to clarify in the third movie, is that when a canon event does not go down, the universe itself starts to unravel. That's the problem I have. Because that seems like really this. I don't buy that happens. I don't buy that things unravel because a canon event doesn't happen. Like why does that happen? It's not like it's not. Is it a domino effect of like choices lead to that? Like no, it seems like the way we play is like instantly things unravel, which okay I call BS on that until every time I watch it, I still like to question if that's damage from the spot, which it really doesn't seem to be. It just really seems to be because this one can event did not was prevented. The universe was in peril. So again, I'm thinking that's more of like a variable we don't have right now in this upcoming third movie. Which again, as you know, as everyone knows at this point, is the one real legit criticism to lob against Across the Spider-Verse. A part of me does wonder this would never happen in a million years. Like, what if it was just done like you have Into the Spider-Verse, and then you have like a 4-hour sequel, like a Godfather or a Titanic of a sequel that has like this is everything, kids. This is the whole story in 2 parts. Would never happen. I understand that. This movie is always going to be like a trilogy. But here's the thing: I knew going into this it was going to be a part 1, part 2 deal because of how they initially announced the movie. They
Yeah, like I
retitled
said,
it.
it's not the fact that it's a cliffhanger that bothers me. It just is the fact that there's a lot of unresolved plot points.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so just again, there's Miles and Gwen, they're very much a standout. Really good character work on them. The animation's top shelf. Water is wet. You get the idea. Just the point being, Across the Spider-Verse, just it did dazzle. It did impress, and I like being in this world with Spider-Man. I hope they got in this third one. We're getting the Christopher Daniel Barnes Spider-Man. We got to get Spider-Man the animated series in there because we don't have Spider-Verse without that animated series episode introducing the idea of Spider-Man from a Spider-Verse. Essentially, we need that. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Dragon. So I am actually very pleasantly surprised that you and this is the first time this has ever happened, right?
I believe so. I'm pretty sure.
All right. You want to say it?
Like we've had the same number 2, but never not the same number 1. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, ready on 3.
1,
1,
2,
2, 3.
3.
Guardians of the Galaxy,
Volume
3.
Wow, that was not great. All right,
No,
whatever.
not at all.
So, for me, this is a very emotional pick. This movie frankly kind of wrecks me emotionally. I mean, I already love the Guardians movies. I think they're just like they're like Dragon. I know that you and I have slightly different opinions here. For me personally, I think the Guardians movies are like above and beyond anything else in the MCU. I know that you are as passionate about some of the other stuff. That's totally cool. What I think is really fascinating about this being my number one pick is that this is like the year that the MCU fell apart. This is the year that comic book movies and blockbusters in general kind
They
of fell
fell
apart.
short. At the very least,
And
they fell
yet,
short.
and yet, Guardians fucking soared. Like, I knew, Dragon, I knew from the minute this movie started, the first time I saw it, where we see that hand and the reflection in Rocket, in, Baby Rocket's eyes as the hand is coming towards them. And then the fucking acoustic cover of Creep kicks in. Oh, I knew this movie was going to hit different, and it did. Uh, I mean, say what you will about villains, but High Evolutionary is like up there with Thanos. Like obviously he's not as built up as Thanos, but like just as far as being like a pure evil piece of shit that you want to see die, like he might be the single most evil villain that the MCU has had, hands down. Um, Obviously all the stuff with Rocket is just sublime. All the flashback stuff is just, I mean, it's just such a goddamn gut punch. Like that scene about the breakout scene midway through Dragon. I mean, that is going to be the Mufasa's death for a generation of kids. I mean, it is crazy harsh, but in just such a visceral kind of way. And then what else is that I feel like as a teen movie, this might be the best movie in the trilogy because the characters are not separated like they are in Volume 2, and they are at their most fully formed. So like for example, Nebula is like a huge highlight of this movie for me, whereas obviously she didn't really have that team dynamic in the other two movies. Dragon, probably like one of the moments rewatching this movie that I don't think a lot of people talk about is Nebula's reaction to realizing that Rocket's alive. Like you just heard my voice crack there. Like that's genuine. Like I get emotional just thinking about it. Like this is a movie where straight up certain scenes will just like I will just cry like every time I watch them. That is one of them for sure. Obviously, the breakout scene. Honestly, I can't watch the creep scene without crying just because of all the context that the rest of the movie gives to that song. And if it was the original version of that song, the original studio version of that song, I would not like that moment nearly as much. The fact that they pull an acoustic cover of that song is a fucking stroke of goddamn genius, soundtrack wise. Goddamn. Uh, Florence and the Machine, Dog Days Are Over is just like such a perfect note to end out on. I mean that ending, the ending with Rocket is just one of the most cathartic things I have ever experienced in a movie theater. Yeah, I made the right choice here. I made like because I will admit, Dragon, I was definitely I was definitely kind of like um kind of hesitant to put this as my number one just because Disney has had such a shit year. And the whole thing of like, well, it's an auteur-driven cinema and all that. Well, yeah, James Gunn is an auteur, and he made one of the best comic book movies ever. I think he made probably for my money the most perfect trilogy of comic book movies ever, hands down. This is such a celebration of the characters. It is just an emotional gut punch from front to back. And honestly, I kind of love the contradiction of in a year where it was so anti-blockbuster and so so driven by more mature film that this still rises to the cream of the crop as my number one. it's probably most likely going to be the very last chance I have to put a Marvel movie as my number one of the year. And damn it, I'm going to take it. Whew. All right, Trekken, what say you?
Yeah, so this is basically James Gunn's mic drop moment of a film as a filmmaker, where it's like this is a film like they tried taking away from it, and people wanted him back, and he came back, and it's he this is the end of his story, the end of the closing of a big chapter in his life, like a real he really grew as a filmmaker making these films. And of course, ultimately his reward was like, hey, come, show us the way at DC for a bit, would you? um, but yeah, I mean, look, to me, the third film, I still adore the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now, again, that I don't know how much that's just my preference, or I still think that movie's like the perfect
I
blend of
just
like
think that the High Evolutionary kind of tips the scales. Like Ronin is great, but High Evolutionary is just like
Well, no, you're right. Like the High Evolutionary is a great villain. He's very well performed. All that's the Woody Woody. He's wonderful as the character. The issue is not the villain. The issue is compared to the other two films. The first one I feel like still probably as strong as it's just the right amount of blend of like early MCU and James Gunn. The connective tissue of this film is like the only weak point that the other two movies do not have. That I think this movie has, where it's like it's really thin getting us from point A to point B because basically the rocket stuff we know, and as you see and as it's demonstrated, it's the MVP of the movie. All the Rocket flashbacks and everything we're doing. He's the glue of apparently we learned this movie. He's definitely been the glue of the franchise. He's definitely the glue of this story. He's the connecting. He's bringing everyone together. But in doing so, it's like, okay, well, how does this happen to Rocket? Well, Adam Warlock just goes. He's sloppily just tries to capture Rocket and almost kills him. Okay, where's how do we save Rocket? Well, we got to make a pit stop at like OrthoCorp. Okay, what the heck's OrthoCorp? How does that even work? Why does the High Evolutionary need to store his stuff there?
you know what my reaction to those questions are?
We don't care.
We don't care. It's so fucking fun.
I know that's what I'm.
The
That's what
Orgo Corp is such a fucking fun heist set
it
piece. You
is.
got Nathan Fillion in there just killing it.
That's what I'm saying. That's the dilemma there, where it's like, look, I have no problem with the set. I like that set piece, Tiki. It's just that's what I'm saying. It's
I
thin
feel
getting
you
us
that
from.
it's a little thin getting there. I totally feel
I'm
you.
saying an insanely strong trilogy. Okay, that's
Oh.
like the one knock I can really give that movie is that just what gets us to these really fun set pieces is a little thin in the plotting, but all the scenes themselves are great. It's just like, why are we doing that? Because James Gunn says so. Okay, let's just do it. I don't mind that. I look. I don't
Totally.
mind. I just want to acknowledge, like, I'm not just like just glowing about the movie purely because of just it's Guardians of the Galaxy and it's the ending and we all love Rocket. Okay, I just want to say that look, the movie works. It is wonderful. It's hitting the hallmarks, which is like between Rocket and Peter Quill, and honestly all the characters. These are characters essentially in this movie making peace or settling into their trauma. It's like these characters have been really dealing with trauma for three movies. And yeah, of course, I love Peter Quill's character, especially in the first movie. I loved everything I love his arc between the three films, and he's kind of making peace with everything that's happened through Rocket. It's kind of like his touchstone for the movie, and it all just, of course, the music, the soundtrack, as usual, is phenomenal. I mean, there are a few songs from the soundtrack I kept playing like crazy.
Same.
Like I mean, the song I'm blanking on the name of the song. The song where the guard, where everyone shows up to stop the High Evolutionary says they certainly have pluck, don't they?
No
Like
Sleep
that.
Till Brooklyn.
No, not that one. That's more
Not
they're
that
they're
one.
they're taking out everyone in the hallway. Essentially, they're doing the Netflix hallway scene. Essentially, that's what
Yeah,
that
that's No
was.
Sleep Till Brooklyn.
I know that, but I'm talking about like when everyone like Kraglin, everyone showed like nowhere shows up and blasts a hole in the side of the wall.
Oh, okay.
Like this
Right,
is the
right, right.
day,
Oh.
that one. Anyway, Point being, this the MCU really needed a win this year, and it feels like the Guardians is always like kind of orbiting outside the MCU. It
Funny thing
showed up
is,
when
with the James Gunn factor, you really can't. This is not a win for the MCU. This is a win for James
I
Gunn.
mean that's the thing. Like, then you have like James Gunn. He's like hovering around the set during the Infinity Saga, so it kind of still is James Gunn. So it's kind of
I was pleasantly surprised how well all the Gamora stuff held up on a rewatch, honestly. Because
yeah.
that kind of stuff could easily fall apart.
Absolutely. So it's really meaningful that we have a solid trilogy. We have like again, this is the franchise that everyone kind of doubted in the MCU when it was announced, myself included. I had no idea Guardians would pan out as well as it did and become just this
I think
huge.
it's the crown jewel of the MCU is the
I
trilogy.
yeah, I know I yeah, sorry, but yeah, I concur with that. But you also have it's the Captain America
I
franchise.
know. Yeah.
I mean, look. I'll give you that in terms of like I think Guardians is probably because again, the third act of First Avenger does if you want to really stack them up. I think Guardians is probably a little more solid in comparison if you want to do it that way. The point being, Guardians James that has James Gunn's stamp on it. It's very special. I'm glad he was able to finish his movie, and I'm glad everyone very much has been enjoying the film. It's I don't know. It's about these characters you followed for a while, and it just really it all just worked out in the end, just right. It's just one of those movies. It's just right.
Totally, totally. All right. So just to round out our comments here, um, let's see. Jacob says this is probably my second best for me. I need to rewatch Godzilla to determine. Yeah, Colby says, crush my soul, especially as a zookeeper. Yeah, Colby, honestly, like you, and then I also know that Monkey is very sensitive to animal abuse. So when I was watching this movie for the first time, I definitely had a
I mean, Rocket's first words are
dude,
hurts.
I fucking know. Oh my god. The exposed fucking brain, dude.
Hmm.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, also like the creation of like the animal hybrids. Like that the turtle and like the rabbit guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Um, let's see. Ellie B says I wasn't too invested in Guardians going in, but I still thought it was a great movie. It included one of my favorite songs. So that pandered to me. Jacob says, considering how your picks usually are, I'm pleasantly surprised that a movie like this is your number one. Yeah, Jacob, it's really interesting because this is a year, like I said, we've had so many like auteur movies. We've gotten Miyazaki and Nolan and Wes Anderson and Greta Gerwig and all these auteur directors, Yorgos Lanthimos, and all of these movies are wonderful, but I feel like almost all of them, besides something like The Holdovers, like kind of lacks that sort of like perfect emotional core to it. And like I said, this movie, Guardians 3, if anything else, it is nothing but emotional core. Like I want a tattoo of Rocket's paw print. And so it's like, yeah, if this movie is powerful enough for me to want it like permanently etched onto my body, yeah, it's gonna get number one. And I'm honestly, the more I think about it, the more happy I am with this pick because as much as I liked all the other movies that are on my list, I definitely think this is going to be the one that is going to resonate with me the most emotionally over the years and the one that I go back to the most. Okay, Kokias says next year you can have Madam Web or Craven as your
Oh God.
favorite God.
Over my dead body.
LEB says Venom 3 will save the superhero genre for real.
The only way that's gonna happen is if they actually put Spider-Man in the freaking movie.
Oh my god.
It's the only way that's gonna happen.
All right. Colby says, I agree with Tiki. I trade every other movie in the MCU for more Guardians of the Galaxy. Yep.
Well, I don't know about that. We don't want to. We have the ending. We don't want to like go back to the well.
No, you're right. You're right. I think what he's trying to say is maybe like if you were to pick any movies in the MCU to watch, like you could never watch any movies in the MCU again. Yeah, I would definitely pick the
You know
Guardian.
what it is, Tiki?
Hmm.
It's that I think at the end of the day, it's that Guardians. Each movie felt different than the last, and they felt different than the last, and they felt very like a driven vision versus something that over time has become more and more like disparate or like in a studio mold or like a cookie cutter sort of thing. We're like, okay, we're hitting these familiar beats. Like after again post Endgame, when having that problem majorly, it was like we're kind of directionless, and for a while they were very similar and it feels like the Guardians movies were always like a treat and a surprise, and you never really could
From
predict where
literally
it
the
would go.
first scene of Guardians 1, it's like the identity of these movies is just so firmly established, and every movie it just feels like he built on that identity.
Yeah.
All right. Colby says, yeah, that's what I meant. Not so much to continue the story, but I pick them over anything else in the franchise. Yeah, for sure. Kogia says, Guardians is right up there with the Batman and Infinity War. It's my least favorite superhero films. I don't even know. I don't even know. Again, Kogias, I respect it. I respect it because that is like it is like beyond a piping hot take. That is like a volcanic take. All right, but I respect it though. Okay, guys. Well, this podcast has gone on for over 3.5 hours, and I want to thank you all for joining us for like the more or less the duration of it. I know some of you haven't been here the whole time. That's totally okay. So, Code Gias, Jacob Weil, Colby, Little Blue Dragon. Am I missing anyone?
Okay, let's see. You got Keeper Colby, you got
Oh, and
Jacob.
LEB, of course.
How dare you almost forget LEB, you monster. Shame.
Shame. All right.
Shame. You said Little Blue, right?
Yes.
All right, good.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, seriously, guys, you all rock. Stay tuned tomorrow night. I will be, or tomorrow, like probably tomorrow morning. I'll be posting the first category of the golden tikis for you to vote in. Remember, every category, y'all get 2 days to vote in it. And then once I put up the next poll, then the previous poll will be deleted to lock in the results. All right, you all rock. I'm seriously like super grateful for the growth that our channel has had over the past year or so. And I'm super excited for the projects that we've got lined up in 2024. Have a good night, everyone. See y'all later.
And Happy New Year.